right?
And I know why.
All right. Whoops. What have I done here? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Before I call to order this meeting, I, the chair of the Maynard School Committee, need to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mary Branley. Here. Jessica Clark.
Here. Did you hear me?
Bethlyn Houlihan. Yep, Bethlyn Houlihan.
Here.
That's okay. Natasha Rivera.
Here.
Lydia Clancy, here. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Colleen Andrade.
Here.
Jeff Ferranti.
Oh, hold on. Here he comes.
Here.
Is Jennifer Gaudet with us tonight?
No, she's not.
Okay. Wayne White.
Yes, I'm here.
And anticipated guest speakers on the agenda. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Justin DeMarco.
He will be showing a little later, possibly. I'm not sure if he's in yet. Let me look. He's not in yet, but he should be here by the time. It may be a little late. We may need to take something out of order.
Okay. Well, we have a ton of citizens' comments, so he might not be late at all, because Lord knows how long that's going to take. Brian Beaulieu. Sorry, totally. Beaulieu. Okay.
In here.
I didn't take French, so all right. Thank you. This open meeting of the Maynard School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature a citizens' comment period. For this meeting, the Maynard School Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom as posted on the town's website. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and please take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Additionally, please let the chair know if you are recording or broadcasting this meeting prior to doing so. Please raise your hand in the participants box now if you are planning to record or broadcast this meeting, and I will look now, see if anyone has raised their hand. I do not see anyone. So I am going to assume that this meeting is not being recorded by anyone or broadcast. Okay. Most of the supporting meeting materials that have been provided for the school committee, for the members of this body, are available on the Maynard Public School District website under School Committee Agendas, SC Agenda 2020-21. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Before we go to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for the effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold off on speaking until your name is called. And remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, including colloquy with other members, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And now we have to go to the citizens' comments protocol. Any citizens wishing to make a comment to be read during a virtual meeting and entered into the public record may do so by emailing the comments to comments for SC meeting. I don't know, is that backwards? That's backwards, isn't it? Sorry. No? Okay. Comments for SC meeting at maynard.k12.ma.us. So it's all one word. Comments need to be emailed in advance and will be received up until the citizens' comments agenda item is addressed. Your email must include your first and last names and street address in order for it to be read. Emails without names and or addresses cannot be read. To ensure that your statement is read in its entirety, it is suggested that you limit it to approximately 350 words. Statements longer than 350 words may be cut short at the 3-minute mark in the interest of time, but will be submitted for public record regardless. Comments are limited to 3 minutes or 350 words to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to be heard. The chair will read only one statement from each citizen. However, citizens can submit any additional comments for the public record by providing a copy to the chair via email up until the end of the meeting, specifically stating their desire to have these additional comments included. Please be aware that the citizens' comments agenda item is a devoted time for the school committee to hear from the citizenry. As such, its structure primarily supports unidirectional public recording of citizens' comments rather than a bi-directional conversation. All right, I am now going to call the meeting to order. Do I need a motion? I can't remember if I need a motion.
Yeah, we need to open by roll call. But...
Okay. Do I need a motion or do I just do roll
just
call?
open?
Roll call?
Yeah.
Okay, roll call. Mary Branley.
Here.
Jessica Clark.
Here.
Natasha Rivera.
Yes.
Bethlyn Houlihan.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting is now open. First item on the agenda, if there are no edits or exceptions, I would like to move to approve the meeting minutes from November 5th, 2020.
I don't have any
objections. Are we good? Okay.
Good.
Moving on, acceptance of warrants. If there are no objections, I would like to accept warrants 21-028 and 21-029. All right, we have accepted that. Urgent business, we do not have any the current moment, so we will go on to citizens' comments now. All right, buckle up, people. Here we go.
Lydia, it might be helpful to preface to the public that water breaks might be necessary because of the volume.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So because we have so many citizens' comments, I will periodically probably be taking sips of water, and I'm also in a lot of pain, so I may wiggle around. Do not interpret that as my displeasure to what I'm reading, or that I disagree, or that I'm trying to indicate some sort of negativity towards what's being said, okay? So with that being said, starting with Michelle and Mike Mullen. Dear school committee, I am writing to you on behalf of our son Ethan, senior and one of the captains, and daughter Jordan, junior, to ask for support of the basketball season as approved by the MIAA. Basketball is an integral part of their school experience and critical during this time of COVID for their physical and mental health. As parents, we will reinforce the safety rules for the health of all players. We believe they should be able to play within the parameters outlined by the MIAA and appreciate your support. Next, Matt Terrell. Oh, Matt, you did not include your street address.
Oh, yes, he did.
Yeah, I think he sent another email.
He did.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, right. Here it is. Here it is. Okay. 85 Brooks Street. I'm writing this email to show support for the winter sports program. I fully support the safety measures protocols put in place by the MIAA, and my children will continue to follow all the guidelines. I'm impressed with how the fall program was executed, and it was very important to my son to be able to participate for multiple reasons. Having a daily sports activity while following all the safety measures has provided a valuable outlet for stress release, exercise, and maintaining a sense of community. I fear that if the season is canceled, the disappointment of not being able to compete and continue to improve chemistry with his teammates and friends would have a devastating effect on his mental health and overall academic success. From Chris DeTavi of Michael Road. I am writing to you regarding the upcoming basketball season. I am urging everyone on the school committee to make sure that this season moves forward with the protocols put forward by the MIAA. As a parent of a 3-sport athlete, these kids have lost enough. The benefits to these kids playing far outweigh the risks. It makes absolutely no sense that some towns play and some don't. These kids are not receiving the proper education as it is. Remote learning is not working. You have teachers letting kids out of their class after 5 to 10 minutes. Compound that with the loss of athletics, and these kids are lost. There is irreparable damage being done. With the proper protocols put in place for the student athletes and their parents, there is no reason why this season cannot go on. Mask them up, space them apart, limit fans to 2 parents per athlete. With 12 players on each team, there's no reason why you cannot, I think he meant to say you cannot spread 48 parents apart in a gym to watch their kids play. You can go to a supermarket, church, Lowe's, Best Buy with no problem. You can sit in a restaurant with no mask. There's no reason why you cannot have 12 kids on each bench and 48 parents spread apart throughout the entire gym's bleachers. For the sake of the kids, please vote this in and make this season go forward. All right, Mark Stakowitz, Rice Road. I am writing in support of your voting in favor of a high school basketball season at Maynard High School this winter. Upon reading the protocols the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association has published, along with the overall success of the fall seasons held under their guidance, I believe that the MIAA have done a good job of analyzing the risks and putting into place the needed responses for COVID-19 play. When it comes to high school kids, their activities are as important to their development as young adults as are their academics. Activities are critical to their mental well-being. Many athletes have been locked up since March with nothing but the move of football from fall to fall two. I have experienced the effects of this forced hibernation on my son. These athletes need to get out and play. It is what they have done since they could first dribble and shoot a basketball. This is hopefully a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic that needs to be taken very seriously. It is also a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for these kids to be in high school. They don't get a redo. They will never get this time back, and we should make every effort to make it as normal as we can. If anything, allowing the boys and girls to play basketball this season will put them in a COVID protocol protected environment for the season. They will be accountable to their teammates and coaches to do the right thing when it comes to deciding to go to a party or some other gathering. I think that most would choose playing basketball because it is what they do. Athletic activities are happening all over the country, and I am in support of allowing our student athletes to take part while following the COVID-19 protocols of both the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletics Association. Thank you for your consideration in light of the seriousness of the issue. Christine Kapopoulos, Glen Hill Terrace. I support this basketball season to ensure the students' physical and mental health. I will support all safety measures put in place by the MIAA. Karen Premiano of Pomstidicut Ave. I'm writing in support of winter sports and more specifically basketball. My daughter was able to play field hockey this fall and she benefited greatly. The ability to engage with others in a safe manner was so good for her mental and physical health. The safety measures put in place enabled the girls to play safely, and the protocols were enforced and adhered to. Having 2 lanyards per student and the rule of spectators only allowed for the home team at games made social distancing simple. At games, people did check and enforce the limiting of people at the games and kept everyone safe. I believe this would be easy to continue to enforce at basketball games. The children have already had to miss out on so much. I believe it is important to give them the opportunity to try to make this season work. Michael Monahan, Allen Drive. Dear school committee members, I understand that you're meeting on Thursday night. You will be discussing and making a decision on the upcoming winter sports seasons and whether or not the student athletes of Maynard High School will get the opportunity to play. I am the parent of a boys basketball player, and I'm really hoping that the kids are given a chance to compete this winter. The MIAA has come up with a plan and set of guidelines that I think are responsible and will give the kids a chance to compete safely. Now more than ever, the kids need a physical and emotional outlet, and I think team sports will provide it. I intend to hold my child accountable and will strongly encourage him to follow the safety guidelines should the season take place. Thank you for your consideration. Jacqueline Capone, Dartmouth Street. I'm writing in support of the winter sports season. I feel it is beneficial to our children / student athletes, both mentally and physically. We will follow all of the MIAA / school guidelines in order to maintain the safest environment for all involved in the winter sports season. Kevin Fowler, Balcom Lane. Dear school committee members, I am writing to you as I know you will be discussing and making a decision on winter athletics. If we look at this through the perspective of children, of course they want to play. The reasoning for wanting this would be, I love playing, it's fun, I enjoy the competition, I get to be with my friends, etc. All fundamentally great reasons. But we know as adults during COVID-19, these reasons may not be enough. However, I believe as adults, it's our responsibility to take a deeper look and remind ourselves why we want our children to play a sport or join a club. It could be on the basketball team or the chess club. Either way, through this, they get to learn all the intangible characteristics that without question increase the probability of a child leading a mentally and emotionally balanced and successful life. Whether it's struggling through a practice or game and learning about adversity and perseverance, going to practice even when they don't want to and learning discipline, contributing as an individual to a collective common goal and learning about teamwork. There's also the joy of winning, but equally as important, the lessons learned through losing. The physical, mental, and emotional benefits are endless. These intangible characteristics that lead to healthy and well-balanced children can all be nurtured through sports or a club. The risk of COVID is real, but we must also weigh the risk of continuously taking away these opportunities to learn these life lessons and nurture these characteristics. I would argue that the children, with all their current life restrictions, need this season now more than ever. I would suggest placing all the responsibility on the children participating to adhere 100% to the guidelines set in place. My ask is that the school committee fall in line with what the governor of Massachusetts and the MIAA has already approved and support a basketball season for these deserving student athletes. I truly appreciate your efforts surrounding this matter.
That's a repeat.
The next one is a duplicate.
That's a repeat, yeah. Elliot Prisby, Elmhurst Road. To the school committee and administration, first, I thank you all for your very hard work during these unprecedented and difficult times. It has come to my attention that many members of our community are pushing for schools to reopen and to run full day in-person classes. I cannot overstate how dangerous and irresponsible this idea is. I understand that things are hard right now and that kids, parents, where'd that go? Kids, parents, and teachers are struggling to get by with online classes, but the solution to these problems is not to place the burden of responsibility for the lives of our families and our teachers on the shoulders of little kids, especially when we already know that the pandemic disproportionately affects BIPOC and other vulnerable neighbors in our community. These folks are already bearing a greater load, making up a majority of essential workers and having less resources to see them through the pandemic. Putting kids back in school adds a burden that is short-sighted, cruel, and unnecessarily exploits our vulnerable neighbors for our own benefit. I applaud the school committee's efforts at keeping our children and teachers safe and encourage you to continue to do so by holding online classes until a vaccine is widely available. I thank you again for your crucial work during this very difficult time. Rachel Triba, Dartmouth Court. Good morning, my name is Rachel Triba. It is deeply concerning to hear that there is even a thought to discuss the possibility of reopening schools in the middle of the second surge of the pandemic. While I can understand that there is public pressure to get the students back in the building, I have no doubt that we would immediately have to close down again due to an outbreak of the virus, which could have deadly consequences. Personally, my fifth grader simply cannot attend in-person classes. We have family members with chronic health conditions who would be at high risk if exposed to COVID-19. Sadly, other members of our community struggle to understand that in pushing the schools to reopen, families like mine will be in a position of literally having to choose life or death scenarios to keep everyone safe. Would I have to unenroll my student and homeschool them? What solutions exist to keep everyone safe in the event that we have to send our students back into the buildings? Everyone agrees that keeping our students home is not ideal, but can we also agree that a death of a family member would have a farther reaching impact? It is a stressful time for us all. Please use sound logic and clear communication in any decisions going forward. Your time and energy would be best spent problem solving accommodations for those who require their children to be in person for school, rather than subjecting the entire community to a dangerous and deadly situation. Thank you for your time. Amy and Brian Gilligan, Great Road. I would like to voice my support for the 2020 basketball season approval. Student athletes are used to the physical and mental rigor of participating in sports. It keeps them both physically and mentally well. When my daughter has a 2-hour practice, she comes home with endorphins in full force and can tackle all the schoolwork and stresses the world throws her way. It is a built-in defense mechanism that keeps her strong. For my part, I will adhere to any and all safety measures put in place by MHS and the MIAA and be certain that my athlete does as well. A body in motion stays in motion, both physically and mentally. Let's keep our kids in motion. Jen and Mike Brogna.
No address.
No address.
There is further up.
There is?
Yeah, in the subject line, it says 4 Little Road, Maynard.
Oh, I don't have the subject line because these have all been copied and pasted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right,
it's in the subject line though. Can we?
Okay, but you just said the address, so that's fine. Colleen, did you get the address for the minutes? Okay. We are writing to share our strong support in favor for basketball to be played this season. We understand the risks of COVID, but feel confident that if we all adhere to MIAA guidelines, this can be done safely. Our son is a senior and basketball provides a constancy of structure and camaraderie that is much needed during these times. With the world in the midst of the pandemic, kids feeling more isolated than ever and winter looming, the students need this. It provides the physical and social activity they so desperately need. More importantly, we cannot underestimate the value playing will have to their mental health. For many, including our son, it promotes academic success and allows them to feel part of something. The benefits far outweigh the risks for these students. We will support and adhere to all MIAA safety measures. We will do whatever it takes to ensure these kids have an opportunity to play. These kids need this now more than ever. With proper precautions, this can be done. I hope you all vote in favor of supporting basketball. As Nelson Mandela once said, sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. Marianne Roach, Rice Road. I am writing in support of allowing the high school basketball season to be played within the guidelines set by the state and the MIAA. Physical activity is so important to all of us, both for our physical and mental health. Teenagers require physical activity and socialization, and the more we can engage them in structured, safe activities, the less they will find other perhaps not as safe outlets for their endless energy. Of course, following the rules set forth by the state and the MIAA is of utmost importance. I think we learned during the fall sports season that we are able to safely implement sports, follow the guidelines set forth by the state, and allow our children these important developmentally appropriate activities. Brian Smith, 2nd Street. Dear Maynard SC, I am writing in support of approving a 2020-21 basketball season for both teams at MHS and FMS. My support is based upon recent experience with my kids participating in various forms of athletic competition this past fall. I have had a daughter participate in MHS soccer, as well as 2 college athletes who participated in team activities on their respective campuses without contracting COVID, as evidenced by many negative test results. I believe it is possible for the students to participate in a way that is safe, healthy, enjoyable, and fulfilling, while under the supervision of coaches who ensure safety guidelines and protocols are adhered to. My wife and I were also strong advocates of adhering to the guidelines put in place by the MIAA and/or the particular university. I also have personal experience that shows me the students in my house are much more disciplined, organized, and focused on their school responsibilities and commitments when they are participating in organized school sports. Please vote to approve a winter season for the students at MHS, especially the basketball programs. It is my opinion that the kids deserve this approval after all the sacrifices they have made over the past 10 months or so. Alex Waldron, Harvard Road. Do we read out of town emails?
They have children.
She is a parent.
She's a parent.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
In the school system.
Yeah.
All right, just double checking. All right, Alex Waldron, 28 Harvard Road. This is a comment in support. Do I need to say Stowe for the minutes?
What?
Anyway.
I'm sorry.
Do we need to put Stowe just for the record?
The comment itself will be part of the record.
Right, but do we, anyway. This is a comment in support of the prudent decision by the Maynard superintendent and the school committee to start slowly in the phased reopening of the schools rather than jumping on the bandwagon to rush and throw the doors open when COVID numbers are higher than they were back in March when the world closed down. We are all COVID weary. I am sick of having to stay away from family and friends, but part of why this has been so prolonged is precisely because of the rush to open so much without the science not changing since March. If we can hang on just a bit longer, the science is about to catch up. Now is not the time to throw caution to the wind. Thank you. Stacy Briggs, Roosevelt Street. Dear Superintendent Haas and Maynard School Committee, I would like to ask you to allow our students to play basketball and other sports recommended by the MIAA this winter. The MIAA has established a COVID-19 task force subcommittee whose members were appointed and charged with determining appropriate measures for MIAA sports to be played safely in alignment with guidelines set forth by Governor Baker, the Mass Department of Health, and DESE. On November 20th, the MIAA Sports Medicine Committee and the MIAA COVID-10 Task Force approved modifications to winter sports. Please see the attached file for information regarding the basketball modifications. Playing organized sports promotes healthy living and improves mental and physical health. With the rule modifications and guidelines, I believe we can safely play basketball this winter. Sports are an extracurricular activity and no one is required to play. Please give the parents the option of letting their athlete participate. Okay, Elizabeth Swayze, Summer Street. I am writing to encourage the board and the schools to figure out ways for our kids to return to school full-time or as close to full-time as possible. Cases are rising and emotions are running high. This does not change the fact that schools, especially elementary schools, have had extremely low rates of transmission all over the world. States with few restrictions and higher rates of infection have managed to keep schools open. Private and charter schools all over Mass are open and have not been overwhelmed with cases. Public schools need to step up and do what is needed to get the kids back in the classroom. I'm not suggesting that we do this in a vacuum. The state needs to be doing more to provide testing at our sites, school sites. The state and our community may also need to make some difficult trade-offs in high-risk areas to ensure that kids can attend school in person. High-risk areas include gyms, indoor dining, bars, contact sports, parties, and social gatherings. There is clear evidence of transmission and super spreading in these areas. Again, this is not the case with schools where student interaction is strictly regimented. Our town has yet to mandate mask wearing. Perhaps if the schools made their reopening contingent on this kind of policy, we would see more action on this. All of these things are interconnected. Our family is among the most fortunate. Both parents are working full-time from home. Our kids will not fall too far behind with a year of minimal schooling, but they are not thriving, growing intellectually, or being challenged with remote learning. Getting by should not be a comfortable baseline for our district and our community. I realize that bringing kids back to schools entails risk. However, it has been demonstrated to be a relatively low risk, and the rewards are very great indeed. Amy and Bill Shue, Summer Street. Dear Maynard School Committee members, we are writing to you to express our concern with the current push to get students back into school full time. While we see the benefits of in-person learning, the risks outweigh the positives at this time. In addition, with the numbers in Massachusetts and Maynard at a higher daily rate than ever, we would say it would be most wise to push the complete opposite, a full remote model. While it is easy to lead with emotion, we ask you to follow the facts. The numbers are too high. There are no testing protocols in place to actually tell how much transmission is happening within the schools, and it is just too risky and unsafe. We have come this far and put in a tremendous amount of effort together over the last 9 months to ensure the health and safety of our children. With the vaccine on the horizon, this is not the time to put our town at risk, at even bigger risk. Maynard Public Schools need to lead by example and think about our entire community, especially our children and educators. All right, we'll take a break.
Doing good, Lydia.
Thank you. All right, Kathleen Fitzgerald, Great Road. Dear members of the school committee, I am writing to urge you to act with the utmost caution and prudence when making decisions about reopening schools fully for all students. This is not a decision to be made based on pressure from parents who are understandably frustrated and fatigued by the ongoing disruptions and trauma of this pandemic. Instead, please turn to the best available scientific findings and data to guide your decisions. Schools should not reopen full-time at full capacity until the safety of the students, teachers, custodians, paras, aides, cafeteria workers, and other essential and deeply valued workers is ensured. Until that can happen in a transparent way, this community must find creative solutions to assist families and students who are struggling. As you surely know, the decision to reopen schools impacts the health and wellness of not only our school community, but the wider community as well. Jessica Noble, Powder Mill Road. The children of Maynard Public Schools should be the priority of the school committee and superintendent. Our kids are falling behind. There is an increase in depression, anxiety, sleep disorders, and weight gain. Experts have been saying for many months that kids are safer in school and should be in school full time. While the teachers have been doing an amazing job, the kids cannot adequately learn remotely. Families are losing all faith in Maynard Public Schools, and if no action is taken soon to get kids back into school full time that did not choose remote, then that faith will be lost forever. Okay, Jerry Armsby, Butler Ave. Dear committee members, I've encountered rumors floating around the last few days about Maynard schools reopening in person full time. Today, there were over 6,000 new cases of COVID diagnosed in the Commonwealth, a more than 30% increase over the records set earlier this week for daily new confirmed cases. Reopening schools for full-time in-person learning is a reckless and dangerous course for our community with potential deadly consequences for our children, for education workers, and especially for our elder, immunocompromised, and other more vulnerable neighbors in town. I strongly advocate for and hope that there will be a loud chorus of voices from the community in support of continuing hybrid or fully remote learning until the current surge has definitively passed, in order to be preventative, proactive, and protective of the lives of residents in Maynard and people who work in this community. Okay. Andrew Demore, Roosevelt Street. This was a long email, so I'm going to probably have to cut it off at the 350 mark. Dear school committee members and Superintendent Haas, I am stunned and horrified to learn that there's an initiative underway to open the schools for full-time in-person schooling. Why now? We are entering the worst part of this pandemic, even in Maynard, 22 new cases over the past week, which does not include the expected post-Thanksgiving surge. This winter is likely going to be devastating to the United States, Massachusetts, Maynard, and our friends and families. People have pressed and pressed to loosen restrictions, to avoid restrictions, to ignore public health and medical advice, and we are all paying the price. Hospitals nationwide are nearing the breaking point. While we in Massachusetts are blessed with perhaps the strongest healthcare system in the country, it too may be overwhelmed this winter. Lack of beds, sick clinicians, and fear of obtaining care for non-COVID but critical health issues will take a heavy toll. Everywhere people have moved to go back to pre-pandemic life, the virus has exploded, causing immense human and economic damage. As I understood it at the beginning of the school year, the premise was that if cases began to rise, even hybrid schooling would be reevaluated, which seems to have been ignored. Recently, it is clear the state government simply moved the bar regarding classification of towns' risk levels. What was only a few weeks ago a serious problem is now nothing to be concerned about. 12 cases made Maynard red at one point, and that number has simply been moved far higher as the number of cases increases. We are close to weathering this storm. Effective vaccines are coming. Why on earth would you choose to take steps which risk drastically increasing the damage when the light at the end of the tunnel is in sight? Be leaders, not followers of state guidelines, which change with political whims. The risks to children may be smaller, though there is plenty of data to suggest that it is not the case. But you will be putting every teacher and member of the staff at risk, along with their families and communities across the Commonwealth, and all of the families of Maynard. All right, I'm gonna stop that. There was more, the entire thing will be included in the minutes. All right, next email. This also is going to have to be cut short. Heather Monero, Mark's Way. Good evening, Maynard School Committee, Superintendent Haas, and fellow members of our community. I'm writing tonight because I'm deeply concerned about the current threat and growing numbers of COVID-19 in our community and around the world. In recent days, the COVID numbers around us have been shocking and scary as they rise to the highest numbers that we have seen since its start in early spring. Despite the surging numbers, our schools and town are being pressured to open for more in-person learning. Although I understand the inconvenience that remote learning poses and some of the issues that can arise because of it, I am deeply concerned about the continuation of in-person learning and the pressure and thought of increasing the time that our schools are open during this time. This has the potential to have a huge, devastating impact on our children, teachers, and community as a whole if we have additional exposures and outbreaks in our school and town. Some may argue that schools are not contributing factors to the spread, but this is impossible for me to comprehend. We are being told not to gather in groups inside. Our schools don't have the best ventilation system. Our children don't always follow mask wearing and social distancing, as proved by multiple reports every day within each school. Our teachers and staff are vulnerable. There is no doubt in my mind that schools are a factor in this silent spread. Some kids may be asymptomatic, so they're not being tested, but still are spreaders. To continue in-person learning, let alone increasing it, it is irresponsible and dangerous for our kids, school, staff, teachers, and community as a whole. Prior to the start of this school year, we were told by the superintendent and school committee that return to school would only be considered by reviewing the number of cases in our town every 6 weeks, and then carefully considering which grades to send back and when. but our town numbers continue to rise and the original plan and schedule has not been followed. All right, this next one is also over 350 words and will be cut short. Mackenzie Monero, Marks Way. Good evening. I am a full remote senior from Maynard High School with deep concerns about the rapidly growing and fatal COVID-19 virus. Before the start of the school year, we were misled into thinking that grades would slowly return throughout the end of 2020 and into 2021. It seems as though just when the numbers spiked, the high schoolers were already going back. With being a senior and doing online meets, I am able to see my classmates both in school and at home. I have witnessed multiple times people pulling down their masks to talk, people wearing their masks below their nose, and simply not social distancing. This is concerning as this is protocol, and I've heard from students that teachers do not always enforce it. If I am witnessing high schoolers do this, I can only imagine what the younger students in the Green Meadow and Fowler schools do. It has been proven to be true that children are not completely safe at school, as we have already had multiple cases reported in Green Meadow and at Fowler. COVID-19 does not discriminate to age. I wrote to the superintendent a few weeks ago and voiced my concern. He replied that they will be watching numbers in other school districts around. This was right after Marlboro High School went fully remote due to multiple cases, and so did many other schools. With the holidays and the winter upon us, this virus will spread more rapidly. This has been shown through the skyrocketing numbers in increasing cases. Many schools are transitioning to fully remote, and I expect others will soon follow. We are told safety is our #1 priority, yet we are sending our children out in a deadly pandemic that has taken hundreds of thousands of lives. Masks and social distancing simply will not protect everyone, especially when people are not even following the guidelines. Our teachers are afraid for their lives and for their precious families who they go home to and risk exposing. The numbers are only increasing as the hospitals are reaching capacity limits. All right. Ken Estabrook and Lindy Gear, McKinley Street. We would like to express our appreciation for all the hard work by the teachers, staff, and administrators at Maynard High School since the academic year began under the COVID pandemic this past fall. We have 2 daughters attending MHS and believe that the teachers, staff, and administrators have done an excellent job providing a safe and effective learning environment for our daughters' learning. Initially, the remote posture and continuing into the current hybrid posture. We also wanted to acknowledge the leadership of the Maynard Public Schools Administration, playing a critical role to ensure that our schools get the state and federal funding that they need and that our children deserve. We realize that there are many in the Maynard community who would like the schools to open up more quickly. However, in light of the recent increase of COVID infections and hospitalizations in Eastern Massachusetts and around the country, we feel that opening schools up too quickly puts at risk our teachers and indeed others in the community. All right, that was the last one. Colleen, have you checked the email to make sure nothing else has come in?
Nothing else has come in.
Okay, and that ends citizens' comments. So now we move on to superintendent's report.
Not sure I can compete with that.
Oh.
Certainly not in length. However, I will address several of the topics that you have brought up and that the community has brought up in their letters. So I definitely heard, and as did the school committee, all the different perspectives on both winter sports, specifically basketball, and the educational programming, whether it's a remote model, a hybrid model, or a full return to school model. And there's opinions and perspectives on that for every path possible. And I hear all of that. I respect that. At the end of the day, we have to make the decision that's best for Maynard and for all of Maynard, for the students, for the teachers, for the community. So let me start by thanking a group of people that don't normally get thanked, because I thank the teachers all the time and I should thank them. So I do, but I also want to thank the custodians who they're really an integral part of this conversation, because if I think of why are the numbers low in the school? So as people have commented, The numbers in Maynard have gone up significantly. They're up, hovering right around 20 right now. And the numbers in school continue to stay relatively low. Since the outbreak, we've really had 6 positive cases since we've opened school. And that's it. We've had a lot of kids quarantined because we play it safe. And one of the reasons, there's a lot of reasons that I think this is true. The custodians, they're a big part of it. They clean the building consistently. They disinfect the building consistently. The staff, they wear their masks. The students, they wear their masks. We reinforce the safety recommendations of the CDC and DESE and the Board of Health. I mean, they're basically all the same recommendations, but specifically, what are we doing in Maynard? Mask wearing, 6-foot physical distancing, cleaning the buildings, kids are washing hands, disinfecting, doing health checks. That combination of things, being really, really consistent in that, I think is what's keeping our numbers low and keeping our students and their families and our teachers and their families as safe as possible in the middle of a pandemic. So what gets challenging is when people are like, hey, can you open more? The sad fact is, I don't know what part of all of those different pieces are working really well. Together, they work well. But if we start to change any one of them, so for example, we limit the number of people in the building and we limit the amount of time they're in the building so that the total number of people and the time in terms of exposure, we've intentionally limited. And I think that contributed to our numbers staying low. Right now, from everything that I'm hearing and reading, December, January, and February, they could be challenging for the country. Massachusetts is no different. They could be very scary times. So I wouldn't want to change a system that appears to be working. And when I say working, I mean it's keeping our numbers in schools low. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Do we, and when I say we, again, speaking for the school committee, because I talk with them, we want all kids back. That's the goal. All kids back full time. The teachers want it, the administration wants it, the school committee wants it. But we want to do it in a safe way for everybody. And so as we started this year, and several of the comments reference this, we started cautiously. We said we were going to watch the numbers, and we watched the numbers. And honestly, I thought the numbers would have been higher at the beginning of the year after Labor Day. Didn't happen. Do we know what's going to happen after Thanksgiving? Not yet, but it doesn't seem like there's big numbers in schools. Again, we're keeping things safe, and we're going to continue on that path for right now. We continuously evaluate. I will say that. So when people are saying, are you actually looking at the numbers, or is this just a done deal and you're going to stay hybrid forever? The answer is no. We look at it all the time. We're planning. So we're planning for when the numbers go down, when there's when it's stabilized, when there's a vaccine. There's lots of criteria. We can move to bring kids back and stay for full days, and ultimately all day, all week, back to what we would consider normal education. So we look at it, we evaluate it, we plan for it. I'm not going to recommend that we move in that direction in December in the middle of a pandemic, however. So I'll just put that out there. So I know for some of you that's a relief, and for some of you that is not helpful. And I'm glad to meet with you and discuss that. So you know that. There are some positive things, that's kind of just the overview, but if we get down to some of what's happening on a day-to-day basis at the schools, something really interesting, which I don't think everybody knows about, would be that our SRO, Officer Ruggiero, is actually working to build relationships at the elementary school level. So she's committed to reading in every teacher's classroom this year. So it's a lot of classrooms, and she's already started. She's made her way through kindergarten, and she's starting first grade. And she loves it, and the kids love it, and the teachers love it. It is a win-win. We like that when we can get those. At the middle school, something exciting. If you are free on December 16th, and you actually don't even have to leave your house because you can do it from home because of the world we're in, there will be a virtual winter course concert. So there'll be more information coming out from the Fowler Middle School, and you can tune into that. Maynard High School has a presentation for parents, students, specifically of grades 4, 5, and 8, to really explain and demonstrate what Maynard High School has to offer programmatically, extracurricular wise, why stay in Maynard? Why be at the high school? So they're working on that presentation and working to get students to be part of that, to really share what's the great experience they've had. And I know that a lot of people on this call, because I've spoken to you, have older kids that some of whom have graduated, some of whom have left Maynard and returned to Maynard, but there are a lot of really good programs at Maynard, and there's a lot of really good things happening there that just not everybody knows about. And sometimes, you know, your inner circle knows. So this is an opportunity to really spread that good news with the younger kids and with the kids that are approaching high school age as well. A couple other things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's huge, huge, huge. That is, I'm so thrilled to be hearing about that. So yeah, thank you. And
You're
thanks
welcome.
to Charles and to Chuck and Kevin also for putting it together. So.
It'll be good. A couple other things that are coming later this evening, so I'll just sort of introduce them, but then I know they're on the agenda, and the chair will move into those. One is the solar power discussion. So that's going to be, I'm sure, when Justin DeMarco gets here. He may or may not be on yet. He'll give a good explanation of where we at, both in terms of the schools and the towns, and just how did we get to where we are with the solar project. It's an exciting project, both for the schools and the town for a variety of reasons. And he'll explain that, so I won't go into any detail there. Something exciting in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism. That's one of my goals. That's something that's important to me, how we go about that, how we explore that. So we're starting some professional development with the leadership team to begin with, starting next week, with a consultant to really push ourselves to really dive into that topic. And then we'll, next steps will be to roll that out to teacher leaders and then staff in general as well. So that's kind of a long-term goal. But the kickoff is actually next week for our administrative team. And I'm just excited to share that with you because I think that's a good thing. We've had some, you know, that topic has come up recently, and it clearly was not necessarily, let's just say it didn't get rolled out in the way. The topic is an important topic. We want to address the topic, and we're going to work on doing that in the best way possible. Leave it at that for now. The biggest thing on the agenda, I probably should have mentioned it first because I see our athletic director, because he actually is on my screen, Brian Bellew, and clearly basketball is one of the most important things going on right now, besides whether or not we're full-time or not. And he's got a presentation, so I'm not going to steal his thunder. He and I have communicated multiple times this week about which direction to go with this. And I think his presentation will be helpful. It'll really identify the restrictions and the regulations and recommendations from MIAA, and that's our governing body for interscholastic athletics. At our next meeting, just so you know, we were going to have our nurses present tonight and just share some of what we do and how we do it and whatnot in terms of safety for the overall building, but we've asked them to hold off a couple of weeks because there was just a lot on tonight's agenda. So you will hear from them next time if you're so inclined. That's what I have for you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so chairperson's report. I don't have a lot, actually. I just wanted to mention I went to the select board meeting on Tuesday, and at one point there was a discussion about complaints and misinformation going around about enforcement of mask wearing and what is the Board of Health doing, and there seems to be several different circles who are communicating in a vacuum and not checking with the relevant authorities to find out what is true and what is not true. And I would encourage people to, rather than, you know, go to Facebook and start asking whether or not the police are enforcing mask wearing, or whether or not the Board of Health is actually checking up on cases and doing contact tracing. I would request that you check sources and actually talk to the people who are doing these things rather than spread rumors and cause unnecessary panic. Kelly Polichonic, who is our, I believe, our health agent on the Board of Health, she does actually follow up on complaints that people raise about businesses in town. So if you are in a business in Maynard who and you find that they are not complying with the mask wearing mandate, then she will follow up with them. And she has actually been fining businesses who are not in compliance. So there is work being done there. Chief Noble spoke about how mask enforcement is very difficult because it would take a lot of officers to be going around making sure everyone's wearing masks all the time. He did say that if they pass by a group of people who are out and about and they aren't wearing masks, the officer will stop and say something to them. He said, but they're not going to stop every single person who's walking around downtown who isn't wearing a mask. And it just, I guess, logistically, it's, you know, it's just not likely that they can mandate, or they can keep on top of everybody all the time. So I think what it comes down to is we have to be responsible. We have to do what is being asked of us, whether we agree with it. And I know there are many people in the community who don't agree that we should have to wear masks and who don't comply. And for those of you who want us to reopen the schools for your children to come back full time, start wearing masks and, you know, and encourage people that you see or that you know who don't wear masks, encourage them to start following the guidelines, because that's the only way we're going to get our kids back in school, is if everyone starts complying. And now I'm going to get off my soapbox. That's it. All right, so now we go to other business. Originally, we thought that the school committee thought they were going to have to vote on the solar project, and they also thought they were going to have to vote on winter athletics. Neither of those is true. There is no vote required for either of those. And
Lydia, I'd like to have a discussion about that, because I looked at our policy. We do have a policy in place. We actually have a policy that we adopted in January that talks about sports with the approval. So I just want to make sure that I did upload it to the folder, because I know that this wasn't really shared with the school committee, that we were not going to be voting until just moments before we logged on.
Okay.
So there is policy J, hold on, I think I uploaded refresh.
It's JJIB. However,
and then
have not yet.
Yeah, this was adopted and part of the mask, the ones we did January 20.
I understand that, but we have a current policy and we have not replaced that current policy with this officially yet.
So there is a current policy? Because this was in the folder that said that these were the ones that were adopted.
Well, they were the ones that were mass adopted in 130, right? And now we're going through and we're trying to find the ones specifically that they replicate. Let me look, because I have it in.
And then the other thing, and what I wanted to just kind of reference back is when we voted in the fall, there was indication that we would be revisiting for the school committee to discuss and vote on how to proceed. So I just want to make sure that although we don't have to vote, that it's not where we left off in our conversations from the fall. And that was from our meeting, from our original meeting on September 3rd, in the presentation that we, part of the recommendation that we accepted from our athletic director at that time.
Okay.
So anyway, I mean, I know we didn't have a lot of time because this was just like breaking news right before we logged in, but I just wanted to clarify, because I think that we, you know, whether we are voting or not, I think it is important for us to provide recommendations, share our concerns. And it's just not, a rubber stamp that it's happening regardless without us having the opportunity to maybe provide that opportunity to tweak if that's what we feel is allowed.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'm trying to find.
Yeah, and I just downloaded this policy off of our website. So that's why I referred back to it. So I don't know if the guidance that Desi provided for remote only was, I don't think it supersedes a policy that we would have in place. Although I've never known us to vote on athletics every year. But anyway, I just wanted to present some information that I was able to find in these last few minutes.
All right, I'm looking.
So, I mean, it might be helpful just so we can have the presentation and we can, I'd like to hear what Brian has put together for us and engage.
Well, we're doing the solar first. So let me look through this while the solar presentation is happening. And then we can talk about this before or after the athletic presentation.
That's great.
All right, so I would like to introduce Justin DeMarco, who will be telling us about the solar panel array, and I guess that's it.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Justin DeMarco. I'm the DPW director in the town of Maynard. Thank you for having me. I wasn't necessarily invited to present the solar because it's not necessarily ready for a full presentation, but I am here to answer questions and concerns. Brian reached out to me as this process is still unfolding, but I can at least give the committee a complete update from start to finish where we are in the process. But in the end, you will be approached by me and Greg Johnson from the vendor who has won our RFP proposal with a full PowerPoint presentation and confirmation. So some of the material that Colleen passed on to the committee was just kind of for the committee to try to somewhat stay up to speed with what I'm going to start with. But I'll start for everybody else that doesn't know about the solar project within the town of Maynard. The town of Maynard was awarded a grant from the Department of Energy Resources for technical assistance 2 years ago. When I jumped on and when I was hired last September, no one really took the reins of the grant as there was a large transition in senior staff throughout the town. So when I started, myself and Michelle Resendez, the previous business manager for the school district, got together, looked at it, realized that nobody was really acting on the grant and started to reactivate it. When we reactivated it, what we needed to do was conduct what's called an RFQ, a request for quality. And the reason we do that is the technical assistance grant was able to allow the town of Maynard to hire a consultant who specializes in representing communities such as ours with the solar projects that vendors offer. Solar power is still somewhat new in the realm of public entities. Procurement is a tricky animal. My job and others within the community, we are here to protect the town from getting taken advantage of. It's something that happens in the private world quite often. In the public world, it happens even more, where you'll have a vendor come knock on your door and say, promise you the world, and then you don't necessarily know how to read the red tape, and then you get stuck with something that you regret for 20 years. This happens quite often. So the Department of Energy Resources realized this several years after solar started to become popular, and they provided these grant resources for communities such as ours. So we were blessed to conduct an RFQ with grant funding, which allowed us to hire a consultant. Her name is Beth Greenblatt. She has a wealth of information and over 30 years of experience working for a utility company and then operating her consultant firm for the last 15 years in regards to solar power, energy, and power purchase agreements for communities such as ours. When we do this, once we got Beth on board and contracted her through the town, there's a number of other processes that go into procurement for situations such as solar. So we had to conduct what's called an RFP, a request for proposals. And the reason that we do this is to satisfy Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, which is the procurement that the entire town has to follow. Wayne White has to follow it when he purchases certain equipment such as hand sanitizer. I follow it when we purchase vehicle equipment. It's just a statute that allows the town and the community to get the best price, best bang for their buck is kind of the best way to look at it. So we put together a request for proposal with our consultant, and we were able to have 5 vendors initiate. They're not really bids, but proposals. And within those 5 bids, those 5 proposals, we had to form what's called an RFP evaluation team. And that RFP evaluation team was set up pretty much as a 5-person team, which is the recommended amount per the state and the IG's office. That 5-person team was conducted of major stakeholders within the community, each representing what we believe is the pillars of the community. We had a Board of Selectmen liaison, we had a school committee liaison, myself, Greg Johnson, the town administrator, and we had Brian Haas, who designated Tim McDuff as the facilities manager for the school. That 5-person team then conducted an RFP process, which includes interviews and evaluations. So when we start that process, we have to look at the 5 vendors to make sure that they meet the minimum requirements of our initial RFP proposals. Sadly, only 2 met those minimum requirements, but that's not a bad thing. We made our requirements strict to protect the community and make sure that we're not taken advantage of. We currently have a solar project that we have in town on a landfill, and we are now 10 years into that, regretting a number of aspects that solar project allows the community. We're missing out on a large amount of revenue based off of how that was procured. So we're looking at this in a different aspect. We want to make sure that we're in the right place because this is a potential agreement for 20 years. And then that's a 20-year contract with terms from both sides and both parties. So when we did the initial evaluation, there was 2 vendors that came out with meeting the minimum qualifications. One was SunPower and another one was Kearsarge. SunPower is a national company that has been in the solar game since California pretty much invented it. They started in Silicon Valley and moved their way all the way to the East Coast. Kearsarge was a local company that specializes in the East Coast area. So we were very happy with both of our potential proposals. And then we started to conduct what's called a non-price proposal evaluation. That is where we look at the presentations pretty much from the 2 vendors and what they're looking and planning to do from infrastructure situation to an aesthetic situation. Are they willing to give us more than what we asked for, you know, but without money? This is really like the curriculum aspect is written into the non-price proposal. Are they willing to work with teachers? Are they going to dump a curriculum and run away? All these things, all these factors are looked into. And then from my aspect, infrastructure, making sure these structures are structurally sound. Do they meet what we're looking for aesthetically? Are they appealing? Lights, you know, security, all that stuff kind of gets evaluated in the non-price proposal. And then the price proposal part of this is very complicated. That is where our consultant plays a major role, because it's not just, hey, we're going to give you $30,000 a year for 20 years. It's built into the generation of electricity, from kilowatt hours to power purchase agreements, very complex. So our team is not experts, but our consultant is. So our consultant put together the price proposals in a way that we could read them as a team and understand them over the course of the 20 years, so that it gives us an accurate depiction of what we're evaluating. So after that, we conducted interviews to make sure that our partners are who they say they are on paper, and really get a feel for it. And the team was allowed to ask a multitude of questions. And as I said, this 5-person team really was kind of a piece of every aspect of the community. I was very proud of Maro. Maro represented the school committee, and her focus was on the curriculum, as mine was on the infrastructure, as Greg Johnson was on the partnership and the contracting aspect. Tim McDuff was 100% on the facilities and making sure that the facilities impact was very minimum. David's was on the community, you know, its impact to the abutters and the neighbors. So it was a really good team. I've been on a number of RFP evaluation teams in the past, and I am very proud to see this team kind of put this together. After 2 interviews, we were stuck on both. We liked both parties. They actually both presented something very, very good for the town of Maynard, potentially for the town of Maynard. In the end, we ended up deciding on SunPower. A lot of our basis was based off the fact that we believed that they had what it takes to offer a good product. And we actually really were high on, they have some proprietary technology that was very aesthetically appealing for the campus. We didn't want to overwhelm the campus with what would be something that is an impact for 20 years. The design of the canopies themselves within the parking lots, we felt fit the aesthetic value of the campus, and the curriculum was top notch compared to Kearsarge. SunPower is known for a nationwide curriculum, something that I also encouraged and said that you can't put a tangible value on it, because we couldn't. There's not a price proposal for the curriculum. But if you looked at the 2 proposals, it was night and day. And I'm not 100% sold that the revenue is the only thing that we should be looking at with SunPower. In the end, the team agreed with a number of aspects, and we are recommending SunPower to start negotiations with the Board of Selectmen. Now, the reason the Board of Selectmen are in negotiations is, if you remember our last town meeting, the town voted in 2 articles which allowed the Board of Selectmen to initiate contract negotiations with a solar power vendor. And the reason that had to be executed at town meeting is, under Mass General Law, the Board of Selectmen are only allowed to secure contracts up to 3 years. Anything over that is a town meeting vote, which this would be the potential of a 20-year contract. The reason that the school committee hasn't 100% got what I'm gonna tell you in the future is the SunPower's full presentation is, even though that seemed like a lot of work, this is still in its infancy phase when we're talking about how this process continues. So all of the solar power project takes place potentially on the school campus, and it spans from Green Meadow, Fowler to the high school. The sites that were picked were based off the sheer fact of a number of factors, including parcels, how they fit within the utility system, how they can tie into the actual physical utility system. We can't interfere with conservation. There's a number of factors that have to kind of go into what we could propose. And if once you see the full presentation, you'll understand where they are. But I know the school committee kind of probably has questions on site-specific locations, which I'll answer after this. What else would I like to add? So once we're done this, there will be a follow-up and a full presentation that we will set up with SunPower for the school committee, for you to ask multiple questions, regarding your endorsement or not. So just so you know the process from here out, we would need the school committee's endorsement. The Board of Selectmen would need to agree on a contract that works for both the community and SunPower. The zoning bylaws will need to be amended and changed in town meeting as a vote. After that is all done, during that process, the utility company has to accept SunPower's tie-in and make sure they fit within their criteria. And the zoning bylaw will most likely trigger special permit, which the solar power vendor will have to go through the planning board. Hopefully by then we have vetted out most of what the planning board's concerns will be. there will be a presentation to the Conservation Commission as some of the potential locations do fall within the 100-foot buffer. What else am I missing? I think that is everything. And then we would actually have to procure that and move forward. So it's still a long way away, but we are making significant progress towards a potential goal that could add revenue to the community, to the school system over the next 20 years. And then there is the intangibles. And I believe that the curriculum itself will help give the school district a jump above within their STEAM program that will allow you to have a niche and compete against your trade school and your charter schools that are consistently becoming an issue.
So
that covers everything.
Thank you, Justin.
yeah, thank you. Liddy, can we ask questions or?
Yeah, Mary, do you want to go first?
Well, yeah, so Justin, any guess on what we're talking about for time frame? So obviously it probably won't be into 2021, right? We're thinking maybe 2022.
So Mary, you saw how fast I move on the roof when I get the okay.
Yes.
I'm a mover. So my goal is to have it done over the course of the summer. Realistically, I also know that those potential committees, if I don't help pave the way like we're doing right now, and don't take pave the way as a wrong way, but really getting in front of it and allowing committees to really digest it in advance of potentially making their decision, we can help speed that process up. But there's a lot of factors. The utility company has been really slow. So COVID-19 is really hitting a number of situations, and the utilities response is slower than ever. Even the Department of Energy Resources, which is a state entity, just like Town Hall, they're closed, they're working remotely. So a number of those factors that aren't necessarily always there are causing a little bit of delay. But I will tell you, the company that we picked is a mover and a shaker, and they have the resources, financial backing to, do what they need to do and solve the problems that might get in the way to try to move this forward. My goal is this summer, but if not, we would have to try to look at potentially the summer of 2022.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. And is there, like, I know when Michelle Resendez was, in the middle of this, I think it was maybe right when you were coming on board, I had sat in a couple of meetings and there was a conversation around, this is going to save us $40,000 a year in electrical fees. Is there like a bottom guarantee that they are giving us of the least amount of money that we could reap the benefit from annually?
So there's the proposal, and the proposal hinges off of everything that happens from here to the end. So if the school committee says we don't like site 1, 2, and 3 on our property, that drastically adjusts the price and the revenue stream that the community can get. I would actually tell you that the potential proposal is so thin that even a couple of sites being impacted on a minor level drastically change the potential revenue process. During our interview, the team actually asked if we eliminated X, what would the potential price impact be? And a couple of the sites, if they were eliminated, we pretty much killed the entire project from a revenue standpoint, which would not be worth it for the community because we'd be putting solar up for almost nothing. We'd be allowing them to use our processes for almost nothing. But right now, the rough proposal for revenue sources was the town is looking at somewhere between, I think it was $40,000 to $50,000 per year over the course of 20 years. It was pretty much $1 million over the course of 20 years, spread out in different buckets. So how that works, Mary, is there is a straight revenue check that would come to the town as one aspect. The town would also be able to tax the property, which is the structure itself. And then there is the third, which is the potential offset of some of the utility costs. That's the power purchase agreement, meaning that we would potentially be able to buy all of the solar power that's generated to offset our power, but not completely offset it. We would just pay for it at a cost that's agreed upon that would be under what we pay now in the utility. We did initially look at what's called behind the meter, which would be the power is completely produced from the solar and it 100% offsets the facility use. And then anything that's produced over what we would use would then go into the grid. Unfortunately, the criteria from Eversource was not hit by any of the vendors. So instead, it will be a credit system very similar to the solar. But it would be, you know, just rough numbers, anywhere between $40,000 and $50,000 of revenue annually to go to the community.
Just one last question right now anyway. So I noticed on that proposal, they were talking about the upfront cost of all the materials and that. They totally absorb that cost, correct?
Yes, yes. So what we're looking at, and that was part of the reason why we put such a strict RFP together. We are trying to completely eliminate any liability that the town would potentially suffer. You know, Tim can speak to it too, is, you know, we're looking at, we don't even want to touch those systems when it comes to potential snow that's on top of the high school roof. We want them to remove it. We want to make sure that we had a direct line of communication with their operators in case we have an issue. We want to make sure that's reacted upon instantly. Things like that. We really do not want to own or touch any of this. It is not our responsibility. We're actually trying to eliminate some of the potential ripple effects that this would cause, such as stormwater management. That's something that we focused on. We wanted to make sure that we weren't potentially adding slip fall situations in the winter with melt off that turns into ice. I don't want Tim and the custodians to have to do more operational work. That $40,000, if I'm putting plow trucks out there 10, 15 times more a year, that $40,000 isn't worth it to me anymore. Now we're paying for it on the back end. So we did kind of look at what the potential operational cost would be or the impact. That's kind of part of the reason we went with SunPower over Kearsarge too, was that sheer fact that we were trying to eliminate all liability that we'll have. Now, that's not to say that there isn't going to be some impact. There's going to be impact to us, but trying to minimize that was one of our biggest goals.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right, Natasha?
Justin, thank you very much for the information. I know that you've put a lot of work into this. I wanted to, you said that it sounds like where they landed, was SunPower is the vendor. So I was looking in that proposal and the project details, the sites. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of green space that has been designated, Site 1 and Site 4 specifically. And I wanted to just better understand, because it is a long-term commitment. One, just as we're going through the MSBA process, how that may or may not impact our ability for a feasibility study to consider space or, you know, renovation or building or moving or joining, you know, another building. And then the other part too is just areas that potentially the kids might use. I know particularly behind Green Meadow, because this was something new that we had not heard about, the green space. I think when we last heard about it, it was really looking at the roof of the high school and the Fowler carport, like a canopy there. And so I'm just thinking like 20, 30-year commitment of not being able to access those big chunks of green space seems pretty significant, since Maynard does not have a lot of green space to begin with. And I don't know, just I wanted to see what you could share your thoughts on those couple of points first.
Absolutely, Natasha. Let me see if I can screen share for a second.
Yeah, I want to make sure we're looking at the same one too. So I'm looking at.
No one's going to understand us on this one, so
right.
That's why I want to make sure that we're. Is Colleen the host?
Yeah. Or Colleen might be able to screen share it too. If I don't know if she's typing though.
She can make him a co-host.
I just made Justin co-host so he can.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I think just for the public awareness, right? Because I don't think anyone was really clear. We're talking about installation within a year. All of a sudden, this spaces would become possibly, you know, occupy with these structures.
Yeah, so can everybody see this? It says project details, 5 minutes. I know there's a blue screen. I actually don't know why that's like that, but for the most part, I'm gonna kind of focus here. Can everybody see that?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so site 4, so part of procurement. So I'm a certified procurement officer for the state of Massachusetts. Part of some of the procurement is, I don't like to say this often, but is a bait and switch. So you want to try to get as many vendors here as possible, which is what we did with the potential project you see here. Site 4 was never a consideration for us internally, but it was to try to bring in large vendors. Large vendors bring down the cost of services, or they can provide more money in that aspect. So site 4 is not part of this project, Natasha. So site 1 over by the Green Meadow, site 2, site 3, site 5, site 6, and site 7 are. I know Alumni Field and that whole thing is under the blue and nobody can see that, but there was some areas that we kind of put at Alumni Field, and that was me trying to get brand new bleachers, but that failed. So I was trying to get something in return. Sometimes you can do that. There's a lot of tricks to procurement. But for the most part, nothing is happening at Alumni Field. So pretend to take site 4 off. That doesn't exist at all. The proposal that you're seeing is actually site 1, site 2, site 3, site 5, site 6, and site 7. And some of those are somewhat negotiable. But when you heard me discuss that if we were to remove certain sites, that the project is almost dead in the water. The removal of site 1, which is the biggest generator for them, pretty much made the rest of the sites give us 0 revenue, which means we're not going to do this project because there is 0 benefit to the community. They're actually taking advantage of us at that point. Now, that's not to say that the school committee should endorse that. I'm not here to say that you should or shouldn't. This is technically, this is your campus. But I will tell you, Natasha, when I put the map together with the consultants, the first thing on my mind was the brand new school or the potential addition to Fowler, which would encumber the elementary students. My goal with the MSBA process is to add an addition to Fowler School and try to minimize your operating costs with only housing 2 facilities as opposed to 1. Site 1 would play little to no impact to that because that is too close to conservation and wetland. So the actual building, even if we were to have to build a brand new elementary school, this site would be, it would be passed off anyways. It's not a site that would be comparable for the school. We, meaning the town and the school, actually owns a large parcel behind Green Meadow going towards Keene Ave, which would potentially be a site for a brand new elementary, or the gap and the distance in between site 1 and Fowler School and behind Fowler School is also all school property. So that would be the potential addition. So if you look at Fowler, the parking lot behind the school, you see how there's a site 2 and a 3? The reason I didn't highlight a canopy behind the building, which would be the gymnasium, is for the potential of that expansion as well there, Natasha. So we focused from an infrastructure standpoint to not cripple us from the MSBA process. I am fully aware of us moving forward, and I hope the community endorses it, as you'll hear me completely continue to endorse the potential of following through with the MSBA process.
Yeah, I thank you for that piece, because it sounds like, I guess I was wondering, because is this something that could wait until after the feasibility study, potentially, till we got a more full, clear scope of what our space potential would be without limiting an option? And then the other part too is I'm just thinking, I know behind Green Meadow, and this is when we are educating on site, I believe there are pathways where the students, you go to the vernal pools and do outdoor, and I don't know if that is where those processes go. I don't know if
so I can discuss, yeah, I can speak to that. So the team knew about that. That was actually David Gavin knew about that. I think he said his children actually enjoyed that. So all of those focus points. Now, as I'm showing you this, remember, these are conceptual designs. There will be hard engineering designs, and they will need to be vetted through my office and the planning board, and things like that, Natasha, will be brought up. But we did actually recommend that they not interfere with that because the vernal pools are actually protected. So we can't develop over them anyways. So
well, I just been thinking access to them as well. So
yeah,
that
none of that will be impacted. So the little green line you see here is actually underground wires. So the only above ground infrastructure that you'll see at the Green Meadows backfield facility is the blue, which is the panels themselves. And the green lines that go around it, it would be a fence area to keep that secure. Brian, the superintendent, Brian Haas, actually asked the team if we could discuss with SunPower about putting pretty much a viewing path around the entire solar field as a way for education and outdoor education. SunPower obliged to that. They were completely happy with making sure something like that comes into play. We still have the ability to shift and shape this. So that is going to be a consistent process moving forward, Natasha. If they were to run into some areas of impact, such as they ran into ledge, they might have to change the design of this. There's a number of things that will continue to happen in this process. But for the most part, the field was identified to decrease the upfront cost that the company would have to put in with tree removal, which would drastically decrease our revenue producing product that we'll see as a community. I know this site would be the one that most people would have an issue with, as the site is used for some sports, namely Pop Warner. But just so you know, that site itself does not meet any regulations in regards to playable fields. It's just an open field. It's not large enough to have a football game on. It's not large enough for baseball, softball. It's just really an extra field. Now, last year, while Fowler Field was being reconstructed, this field was overly utilized because there was very limited space. Remember, Fowler Field is completed and is now enlarged and large enough to handle a multitude of sports, a mixed use. That field still belongs to this school committee and this school department. It is yours to dictate what you do with it. It is definitely capable of handling a little bit of mixed use. So just keep that in mind as well. If you got to move some sports over there while we're on the line with anybody, you can kind of move them and shape them. I think Wayne White runs the application process for the school when it's for the athletic fields. So, I mean, a little bit of flexibility is definitely there.
Well, one of the reasons that kind of came up a little bit in thinking was with COVID, and I know the town had a lot of, they use, like, families were using Coolidge, and I didn't even think about this literally until like about a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned is like, you know, that potentially could be a place where people could use that outdoor space for things that are not, it's not regulated for, you know, certain types of play, but it is a green space there. But the other question I also wanted to ask is that, because it looks like it's the whole, is there an option where only half of that might be used, where not the whole green space could be considered, or is it really like all or none at Site 1?
It's pretty close to all or none for Site 1. We did ask that. I think David actually asked that in regards to some of the tree removal. If you see that this top portion has some tree removal, David was very concerned with the vernal pool and its impact, such as you discussed, Natasha. SunPower was very high on, yes, it's flexible, meaning they might be able to shave this, but add it over here. If this was a drastic reduction, it had a drastic reduction in the potential revenue stream for the community. So this one was kind of the crutch, and it's because of the units itself. If you look up here, the size, 1,213.7 kilowatts, that's its energy production. Now, as I go down, you'll see how it drastically reduces for Canopies. I mean, that's really, we'll take.
We're also not thinking about Green Meadow potentially, right? Because that could be something in the next maybe 10 years that would be an opportunity to add. Was that something that we could consider also?
If not with this project. So we would abandon this project because these three alone, so as I show you, 574, 504, 388, these three alone equal that one ground mount for the most part. So these three right here, we'd go into a 20-year agreement with zero revenue source. So there is zero benefit to the community at that point. we're pretty much allowing people to utilize our space for nothing. And then when we conduct another RFP in the future, that doesn't guarantee that SunPower gets another site and piggybacks off it. That's just not how procurement works. Once we're in that agreement, we're in that agreement. I'm not saying that we can't abandon it and try to refocus it in a couple of years, but what I would tell you is we're not necessarily guaranteed the grant for the consultant, and we don't necessarily, part of the biggest thing going on right now within the utilities is a number of communities. So the utilities, when solar originally came out, put out a huge amount of incentives for solar companies to start to put into the grid. Well, if you look across the state and you go drive any highway, you'll see there's a large amount of solar popping up everywhere. Well, the grid only needed so much power. So as that power block is being filled, they're not potentially putting incentives in that make it worth solar companies to invest. So there is the potential, if we wait too long, for this project, even this project, to almost have a negative impact. That's part of the issue. They got to fall within these incentive programs. So these companies put a huge investment up, as Mary said, as they put the entire capital up front, and they look to generate over the course of that 20 years and recoup their funding. But a lot of that funding also has the incentives from the utility that pay them back. And if those incentives aren't there, they have to adjust their profit margins. And that has a clear impact on what they give us for a community impact fee. So there is the potential for it not to happen. And 2 years from now, the blocks completely change, which we're actually at the point right now, we're in block 5 that we're hoping to get at. And if it goes into block 4, there's almost a 50% reduction in the revenue that they would be able to provide us now. And that's literally right now. So,
okay.
Thank
you.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Justin, when a couple of the meetings that I was at, if a roof gets to be a certain age, like we were, you know, the high school was the one that we were really focusing on, then it's not as appealing anymore, correct?
Absolutely. Well, so what it is they go back to the 20 years. So once we go into this contract, we're allowing a tenant to put their infrastructure on our asset. But if our asset underneath it fails, we might have to recoup that tenant. So there's a reason that we didn't pick GM's roof. Obviously, we all know there's a reason we didn't pick GM's roof. But even Fowler's, so Fowler's roof is starting to age out. And you'll hear me start to talk about this during the MSBA process. That's kind of why I'm looking at focusing on 2 facilities for the MSBA, because there's the potential for some of that MSBA money to update Fowler while we're kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So Fowler was not picked because we cannot make sure and sustain that roof will be comparable for the next 20 years. The high school is new enough, was designed solar ready, and is actually our only potential roof within the entire community that could potentially withstand the 20 years without having a significant change in a repair or an upgrade.
Justin, the curriculum aspect that was mentioned, was that in addition to the 40,000 a year?
Yeah,
or was that?
Yeah, the curriculum had no tangible value. It was just part of what's called the non-price proposal. So the 40,000, we don't pay for the curriculum, Natasha. So if we were to secure this with SunPower in the end and we're there, that's part of their proposal. So we hold them accountable to that. Mauro focused on what did that entail? Did that entail that we had a point person, and the difference between SunPower and Kearsarge was that SunPower actually had a curriculum that they could place in the hand of your academic instructors that they can actually follow, not just a person that comes in every once in a while and says, hey, this is what solar is. No, this is something that could be integrated potentially into your science department, into your math department. I think David asked if there was a potential, it was either David or Tim, asked if there was a potential to take one of the mimic models and bring it within the classroom and see if it could show, you know, what the production is and how it worked and put it inside. And SunPower seemed like they had no issues with doing that within their curriculum. So when I was explaining that that's that one part, that tangible that we might be looking at for 20 years, that might have a bigger cost value than even the $40,000 revenue, you know, that's something that I think the team started to really embrace and grasp. And as we know, the school district has seen a decrease, and you're competing against a charter school and you're competing against a trade school. Well, this is something to potentially give you that opportunity to sustain some of your high school or middle school students going into high school, something that your science department can really hang their hat on, we're hoping.
All right, I have one last question, promise. So you mentioned about timeline. We're not voting tonight, but there will be opportunities in the future that you'll be needing our vote. I just want to understand how the school committee will be engaged again, because I think, you know, being the public seeing about Site 1 for the first time, and it is, you know, green space that is somebody, you know, might have a feeling about that because it does take away opportunities for what it is used for now in some capacity. I just want to make sure I understand where the timeline, because it sounds like you're being pretty aggressive in wanting to pursue this.
So we actually, it's not in here. So we just received a stakeholder presentation from SunPower. So until SunPower doesn't want to, they're committed, but we're in the infancy stage of the contract negotiation, and they are just starting their application with the utility company. So I don't want to waste time. Once they secure the application with the utility company, then they're committed from their end. Even if they fail with us, they're already put some skin in the game. They've put some revenue and some upfront capital into getting that far. Once they secure the application, because the utility company could deny them, and then this is dead anyways. So once they secure that application, I will request that SunPower present to the school committee. We'll put it, I'll make that email request to Brian to see if it can get on your agenda and open it up to public forum or public comment for you guys to discuss and see their conceptual pitch that they will be providing to every committee along the way.
That'll be great. Thank you.
Can we also maybe have a field trip at some point?
To see the sites?
Yeah, just to kind of walk around and just to, I'm more of a visual kind of person, but.
I know, I was just looking at like Site 2, 3, like I'm trying to imagine like what are those other pockets, what we might be, you know, are those, there's not all parking lots, are they? There, some of them are.
So if you can see project detail Site 2, 3, Fowler Middle School. These are canopies.
Okay,
so this is what's called a ground mount. Number 1 at Fowler is a ground mount, which is very similar to what you see on landfills. So Fowler, these are all canopies. This project detail Sites 5 and 6 is the high school campus, which is also carport canopies. This right here is where the seniors park and they paint their spots. So these two right here. The other location is actually the gymnasium. 129 Parker Market Basket is over here. And this is the gymnasium. These are also carports. And then this is the high school, and you see the tiles within it. That is the layout on the roof.
Okay. All right.
Let me see. So they have they actually have a better pitch than what I.
Mary, you want to go walk it on the roof at the high school? Is that what you want to do?
No, it's more about that Green Meadow piece that I'm having.
Yeah, I'm with you. Maybe you and I can go have a field trip out there one day.
Yeah, the rest of it's pretty straightforward, but
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
I'm sure the presentation will, you know.
So they have kind of the visuals of the canopies. They have some aesthetic looks at them, kind of see what they look like, things like that. So you'll see all that. And in advance, if you actually want to go out, I'm sure Brian Haas or Tim McDuff can bring you out there. And
yeah, field trip. Come on, Brian.
Worst case, you could email the DPW and I'll carve some time out to get out there.
Yes.
Sounds perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin.
And I just want to ask one other thing, just not, thank you, Justin. I don't want to take longer. You've been giving us a lot of your time and really appreciate it. This is very helpful to be brought into the process now, just like you were saying. I guess the one thing I was just wondering about, oh my God, I'm so tired. I just forgot.
Oh no.
I'm sorry.
Maybe Lydia has a question. We can come back.
No, it's all right. Whatever it is, I'm sure it can.
Was it about green space?
No, I remember. It was. It would be great for. I know there are the people that like we've used that field when the kids were little, for
Tiger
Cubs, yeah, sports and ball, and the Boys and Girls Club used it. So just, I guess, making sure that they are able, that we know and have the plan. Like, I'd feel better like knowing that if this is going to need to go, that we know the places, the other spots that they'd be able to use. And that might be from the school district's end, that we could look at that, or just reaching out to them to let them know. I don't know. It's just, I don't know who would be the one to do that, but that just would feel more like I could then say, like, all right, we have a way that we know we're going to kind of cover that for the community.
Well, it's school land now, so maybe we can, you know, solicit feedback and share this proposal potentially with them. I mean,
so Bethlehem, you're speaking to the right person. We have an agreement between the town and the school where the athletic fields are maintained by us, and Wayne White does the application process. As I explained, the Fowler Field and the increase in the Fowler Field is really the significant factor in this. And as Lydia has talked about too, there is town property as well, Crow Park. There is the Coolidge School land. There is Rockland. There is other locations. I think the significant impact to Green Meadow was the biggest concern was the Pop Warner Little League football and their practice there. I'm sure because it's not an official size, we're not necessarily impacting their play. We're impacting their practice. And if we can carve out some sites on a couple of locations where you can really piggyback the practices off of each other and the fields get used properly.
Okay.
Jessica, do you have any questions?
No, I think they're all answered.
Okay.
Thank you though for your time. Really appreciate it.
I have one, Justin. So on the back end of this, after, you know, they've outlived their purpose, or you know, they're either technology has changed so much that they become obsolete, or they're just damaged to the point where they don't work anymore. What is the agreement or the consideration for removing these and taking care of the waste?
So Lydia, so that is where the contract aspect really becomes interesting. So after 20 years, we're trying to put together a contract that either allows the town to purchase the infrastructure, which then we as the community would potentially see the entire revenue stream, or decommission these facilities, which the community would pay $0 to have these removed and decommissioned. That would fall on SunPower. There is, we're trying to get both of those options within the contract. That's kind of part of the reason why I said there's a lot of way, we're only at the infancy stage. There's still a long way to go, and negotiating those factors and making sure that the community is not responsible for 99.9% of this is our #1 goal.
Lydia, that's a good point, because I actually, the green space one at Green Meadow, I imagine after 20 years, that field will be poo-poo. And, you know, with those pieces there, if that's what we were to do, Justin, it would be great to have some restoration of field components built in. If that's, I'm sure that's on your radar, because you think of everything. I know, but that would.
So that field right now is something that we really don't want our kids playing on anyways.
I imagine it's going to be even worse though after these things are on it, you know, and that would be the burden of the town to then make them even playable.
So it's not playable now, Natasha. I would tell you that you shouldn't really have anybody on that. It's hard as a rock. We don't aerate it. It's not fertilized. It's not watered. It is pretty much a rough patch of dirt. And use from a field perspective, when you actually play on a field, you impact it more than leaving it alone. So the compaction factor is what killed Fowler Field. And if you don't maintain and invest properly, as you heard the Rec Commission speak to the Board of Selectmen, and even I think Mauro represented that tri-board or that 2-board committee. If you don't invest properly, athletic fields can be destroyed within a year. And that is actually from use, not from just leaving that field and mowing it. The compaction is what kills the grass. So potentially having solar there actually mitigates some of the issue that's happening there already.
Well, they wouldn't have like sun access, right? Because they're going to be covered, right? So there'd be no That's what I was thinking.
No,
Like
so
it's
they actually, nope, there's grass that grows under these, and they actually, the solar company is responsible for maintenance of everything within that fence line. So they mow it, they weed whack it, they take care of
okay.
it, just like the landfill cap. So technically, the reason solar panels work so good on landfills is DEP has strict standards for capping landfills, where there's a clay level, and then they put organic matter, and they actually want grass to grow. They do not want hardy vegetation such as trees, because the roots can break the clay pact. So solar works great on that because it sits on the cap, but it allows grass to grow while reducing woody material from growing.
All right. Thank you, Justin, very much for your time. And thank you for being here with us and explaining this to us. This is very helpful, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to come in terms of these discussions and information that we're going to have to process. So thank you for this.
Of course, thank you for having me.
And we can't wait for our field trip. We're holding you to that. Oh, yeah.
Just shoot me an email.
Okay. Brian Haas and Bulow, we are moving on now to the winter sports presentation.
Oh, and I did find a policy. I uploaded it to the folder.
Sorry. Yeah, I uploaded the current policy that we have.
Yeah, yep.
564.
Yep, I put that in there.
All right, so do we want to have that conversation now? Or do we want to hear the presentation and have the discussion?
No, I'd love to hear the presentation. Yeah.
No, I know we would have the presentation either way. I don't know that that discussing a vote, it may not even need to happen, considering we may be in agreement with what is recommended and we won't need to vote.
Right, that's what I would say. Let's let him speak. It just the way when it was framed in the beginning that we're not going to be voting. I just wanted to, that was new information, and from the community perspective, because a lot of people shared feedback. I wanted to, highlight that there is policy posted on Maynard's website, so maybe that's a little bit confusing. That indicates a little bit different. But yeah, I'd love to hear what Brian has put together for us, and then have our discussions flow from there and see how that goes.
Okay. You, Brian Bolo, but Brian B, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, thank you. I don't know why I can't get that right.
Say bowl you, like say bowl and then put a U at the end. That's probably the easiest way.
I get confused because we have Rob Rouleau, and so then I go to say Brian Bo, whatever. It doesn't matter. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Colleen, can you put up the slide? All right, so here we go. Basketball 2021. Next slide. Now, a lot of the parents had said a lot of information already about what I'm going to say here, so I don't have to go into too much detail other than, as I said in the end, it cannot be overstated that the role that this can play on children and the emotional healthy outcomes of our entire community. So that I do want to make sure I say that, although I've heard that a lot tonight already. So, which is great, and I'm glad the parents have come out and have supported that. I will also, in this point, I'll also bring up that the fall season was generally pretty successful. Now, I measured success by if we had COVID cases, if we got COVID cases from another school, and in no case did we. We had one exposure, but with all of the safety measures put in place, that exposure never actually came upon our kids. So in the end, none of us got it. So with what we have going on currently with our rules, so far they seem to have been successful, certainly in an outdoor setting. So, all right, next slide. First up is pretty simple, just going over to some of the winter season dates. December 14th would be the start. Potential first games not all the way until January 8th, gives lots of weeks for the kids to get ready, get in shape. And then the end date's February 21st, so it'll be very fast. Will be a very short season. Next one is our pod teams. This is who they picked so far. Again, they're picking off of geographical base of who we go against, not by a competitive nature per se. That way the kids don't really have to drive further than 20 minutes, 25 minutes to get to any school in a bus. I do think Westboro is probably a little further away. That's about the furthest one there, but everyone else is very, very close. Here are some kind of general rules, just to give you a sense of overall what it will look like for us. First up, there will be no middle school basketball. We'll take that right out. We find that's, as a league, the Mid-Watch League has decided as a group that we don't want to kind of get into that. This one, I think some of the parents might take some issue with, but it's very important to keep the kids safe, because if we do it, we don't want any spectators there. So there'll be no parents, no 1, 2. We had in the fall, we had these lanyards would give out. We're not even going to do that because there shouldn't be anyone there. What we are going to do is find a way to make sure we live stream or record the game so that everyone at home can actually watch the game. I figure that's really important. If we're going to do this, I know a lot of parents really want to be involved and watch it. That's the one way we include them in, by live streaming it. Or also keep everyone very separate. There's JV, varsity. A lot of times you would always have JV would bump up to a varsity game or back down. We eliminate that. We're going to keep everyone in their own pod. So your JV boys, one pod, girls, JV, just to make sure that if you do have an exposure, it only affects that one group and not all the teams. Really kind of minimize what can happen to you. Also, we'll bus everyone separately. So it used to be the case that you have one bus, you'd have your JV and your varsity would go together. One would sit and watch. We'll eliminate that. And that way we keep the teams completely separate. For the next rules we have, these are some more general rules for practicing, outside of game. I've talked to Fowler, and they're going to allow us to use it for basketball. So we'll keep all the girls and boys JV at the Fowler gym. And better yet, we're going to keep them so they're going to enter through the back entrance, or they'll really have no other access to the school. So it will be just the gym in and out, no bathroom access. And that's kind of that way we can keep the entire school safe while still be able to keep them separate from the high school. We found there might be an issue trying to have 4 teams practice just in the high school gym. It might be hard to actually get them all in before 9 o'clock at night. We really don't want to go that late at night if we can help it. So this way it actually works for that and for the fact that we can keep everyone separate. Bathrooms not be available during practice, nor locker rooms. So that way you're just coming into the gym when you leave, and the kids should be showing up ready to practice with a bag with what they need for themselves. They will clearly give some 10-minute breaks between them so that you have less overlay between the kids so they can't group up together. And other general rules, athletes have to wear masks the entire time. They'll do some breaks that will be happening outside if we're going to give them a mask break. And then in the end, what I was just saying, athletes must bring their own ball, water bottle, supplies, masks. They have everything for themselves in their own bag, which is kept 6 feet away from all the other bags. So they're going to go to their spot. They can get their bottle, do what they need to do, but they will not be near anyone else while they do it. Here's some game day rules. Oh, one more up, you skip one. Back up. One more up. Is it the one, or is that the right one? Okay, yeah, so one down now. All right, so for the game day rules, we have, we'll have the same happen with the fall with a COVID captain. This is someone's going to work with the coaching team. It could be a parent who's decided they want to do that and kind of sign in for it. And they're going to be there specifically in charge to make sure that everyone follows the COVID rules. Everyone's using the sanitizer when they need to, coming in and off the court when they're first arriving, making sure all the kids are sitting far enough away. That's their job. So as they're watching the game, they walk around and they make sure that everyone's behaving the way they need to. We'll have stands pulled out and markers on the stands every 6 feet apart. So each kid can sit at their one spot and they'll know what their spot is. They can go to it and keep separate. Sanitizing when you're leaving, going on and off the court. That'll be by the timers table and the clock table. They'll, during the games, we still will not allow any locker room usage, but we will allow the bathrooms to be used. And then we'll just have to do a clean afterwards. There'll be no concessions, and only 3 coaches are allowed per team. That way we minimize how many people are actually there. There'll also be, if we do the live streaming, there'll be a kid or 2 at the top still recording it. I would be there as an administrator, but that'd be it. Here's some specific rules. These are just highlights. These are not all the rules, but kind of gives you a sense of what they actually been doing on the court itself. No more jump balls. Less athletes on the free throw line. Normally got 3 on each side. They knock it down to 2. I thought interesting was it was the end of the game where they have a lot of teams tend to foul the other team. You have to make contact specifically to touch another team to get the foul. You can notify the official that you plan on fouling, and they can just blow the whistle, and you don't have to go through the whole point of just touching the other person to get a foul. They'll also do much quicker whistles with loose balls. A lot of times kids will get together and they'll both be wrestling over a ball. They'll immediately whistle so that you don't have that going over a long period of time like they've done in the past. In the end, I just added in some links here that we can share this with you eventually, just giving you some MIA links on what they would expect and how they would run it through their own winter sports. There are other winter sports going on, but we're the only ones that are doing basketball. That's the only one we have. We did have a co-op with Assabet for hockey, but Assabet is not going forward with hockey. They're not going through with any sports in the fall. They didn't do fall or winter this year. So they're going to continue with that. So that is not a concern for us. So that is all I have for you, but I'd love to answer some questions.
All right. Questions, Mary?
So Brian, thank you. Great presentation. So I feel really good about the home games, but my concern is the away games. Are they going to follow the same protocol as, I know some of them are MIAA, but others you've sort of made more stringent, which I really appreciate. But my concern is that they'll be a little looser at the away games, and that's when we might have problems.
The pod we're in is all part of the mid-watch, which is our league. So the rules, a lot of the rules I specified to you are our mid-watch league rules, which means every team in the mid-watch has to follow these rules and the more strict rules. So it shouldn't be a concern. If clearly you're outside of it, you hope they do what they need to do. But I find that every school will be pretty strict about this. And I'm in a lot of contact with the other ADs of the other schools in our pod too. So we're constantly in communication with each other, even during the fall. Each time we came across a team that maybe broke some rules, we were constantly telling each other so that we could follow up with the teams to make sure that they'd be better going forward.
Excellent, thank you. And how many games are we actually talking about potentially? Are we going to play each one of these once, or?
No, you'll go through a couple of times. I actually don't know the exact number yet because we're still creating it, but it will be less than 20. So
Okay.
12 games to 16 games, somewhere in that ballpark. I don't know the exact number.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, is there a contingency plan for, say, if school goes remote because it's in the red, or just communities in general, their numbers continue to rise? Will there be an opportunity to revisit whether or not games are played after those sort of, I guess, milestones or metrics are reached?
I noticed that MIA doesn't have any real good specific metrics this time around. I think they came up with really specific metrics in the fall, and then they sort of backpedaled on a whole bunch of them very, very quickly, because I think they felt that if you had this big community spread, but nothing was in the high school, that they shouldn't take it away from the high school. So I think that's where it got generated from. So a lot of schools, they all these towns have their board of health and everyone else. And I think they usually judge it from there. They visit them. We can still make our determinations if we would like. If you see an outbreak in the school itself, we will not play them. If you see it in the sport, we won't play them either. But if it's in the community, I would judge it to their board of health to determine if it's something that's in the school or not, and if the school could still be allowed to play us.
All right. Brian H., is there anything set up so that there's that would trigger a conversation about whether or not we would have to discuss canceling a game?
Well, realistically, the athletic directors typically make phone calls during the day of competition, so that if there was a school, say, who's on that list, Hudson, my guess is the AD during the day would reach out to Brian to make that call. And if I had a specific question regarding, say, Hudson, I would simply pick up the phone and call Marco Rodriguez, the superintendent, and ask the question.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? Natasha.
I wanted to wait till everybody else, because I know I took up a lot of time last time. So I know Jessica and Bethlyn, I don't know if they have any.
I don't think so, because the rules are very strict. And my question was the lever for when you wouldn't play. So I guess just knowing that the one thing is that it's still not, I mean, I guess I would say that the lever is still not, you don't know that you have cases, but there could still be people that have not just that haven't been counted, that play, but haven't been counted yet, right? Haven't shown up as a case yet, but they could still be an asymptomatic case at that point or an unknown case.
That actually happened. That's what the one exposure we had was that we didn't know that they were going against them. They didn't become symptomatic till about less than 48 hours after they played us. So, but that school then stopped everything they did, and then we pulled ours, and we had our kids go pull away from that. So yes, that does happen, and they're required to tell within 24 hours. Every school in our pod, if you even have one kid that's COVID, everyone has to know right away, and then we can all make decisions if we want to continue playing them or not. We can make that decision at that time, but we would know right away. The real risk really comes down to is if they were asymptomatic and then they got it and you realized a couple of days later, and that's when we would have to really react and cut out the games that we have.
All right, and that's where I see the protocols that are in place are currently able to keep that transmission from happening, even if there was someone, but you're obviously going to be in closer contact while you're in the middle of playing that game.
Yeah, there's inevitably there's going to be a little bit of risk. Yeah, I mean, clearly they're going and playing a sport indoors. But I think we follow the rules. I think we can keep it pretty safe. But you're right. There's always going to be some small risk there that we're adding on to it, no doubt.
Yeah. This is just an aside, and it was something that struck me when I was reading through the rules. I was surprised that they didn't mandate a zone defense instead of 1-to-1.
Yeah, I didn't see that either. I'm not sure why they didn't mandate or not, to be honest with you.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Natasha.
Yes. So I guess I wanted to, because this is considered a high risk sport, and it's indoors. And in September, we did not want to do football because that was a high risk sport, even though that was outdoors. So from a mindset, it seems like we've changed a little bit more with what we're comfortable with. I just wanted to see if you could speak to that a little bit.
Sure. When MIA and the state looked at it, they actually determined high risk, and then they broke high risk up between two separate ones, like a high risk and then a lower risk high risk, if that makes sense. And yeah, so the high risk would be
it's a low high risk.
Low high risk, yeah. The high one would be wrestling, is what they called really high risk, and they did still remove that as an option. You cannot do wrestling in the winter because there's no way to do the sport without grabbing and wrestling. Clearly basketball, they felt with enough changes that you can still not be as in much contact as possible. Now, I agree that being in indoors, there's a higher risk to it. I do think they may have changed football to now on their assessment. Because remember, as I said, the beginning of fall, they had all these really, really strict rules in place. Then they kind of pulled back on them when they realized that they may have been not what they needed. And I think we're seeing the result of that pullback in this indoor season with how they feel that they can monitor it.
I have a couple more questions for you. So Thank you in advance.
No problem.
So the cleaning protocols, and this might be also for Brian Haas. I know that in the past, and you started speaking to this, Brian, a little bit before our meeting started, but it does require the custodial staff to be present after the games, which is different how we started the year and having staffing levels not available in the evening. So can one of you speak to that a little bit, how that has been modified and what the financial impact of staffing might be to proceed with this? To clean, and also, is there going to be games where they are being played in a certain back to back, but not in a certain period where they would require cleaning in between the game before the next game, those pieces, and would we have staffing needs for that? I'm guessing we will.
I mean, we have a custodial staff. They have already met. They are aware of this proposal, of the JV teams practicing at Fowler, of the varsity teams practicing at the high school. They don't know the exact game schedule yet, but they're They know that there will be games, and they know that there's work involved in clearing out the space to make it basketball ready, and then putting it back together in the morning to make it school ready, and the associated cleaning that needs to go on with that. So they're planned and prepared to move forward with it, and we are as well. And there are some expenses. We haven't run the numbers because
That's what I would like to hear is what
we haven't done that because we don't know how many games, and we don't exactly know when practices are yet, but almost all of it falls within the existing schedule. So it isn't that the custodians will have to be working longer.
So what you're saying is that the staffing levels since the fall have, for the custodians, we have added, right? I know that we've needed to do that. And so the work that they'll need to do for sports will likely be able to be absorbed in the hours currently working.
Yep, and we've changed, so their hours have changed from the fall. So we've gone from simply a first shift to sort of a first and second shift. So we've shifted hours as well within the same people.
Okay. And I guess what I would wonder, because this is going to happen, for home games, this is going to be at the high school. Who is going to be monitoring the no spectator? Because the coaches are going to be watching the games, I'm guessing. Is there going to be a safety person? Because I know part of the regulations is that people can't congregate in the area. I'm wondering how that is going to be monitored and enforced. Because that is where I feel some of the risk will be is, people coming a little earlier, wanting to get a peek. And obviously the coach is going to be worrying about the safety of the players. So how is that risk going to be mitigated?
I appreciate the question. There's two ways that we're going to be able to mitigate that. It was actually tougher to maintain this on an outdoor level. As adults would, parents would try to sneak in indoors.
Parents are sneaky.
Oh yeah. But I understand why they really want to see the kids. I get it. But it was tough. Indoor, they can only come in through one door. So it's going to make it a lot easier to maintain this as they come through. We're going to have basically two people there every game. First will be that safety captain. And that's their job to follow through with the COVID rules. They're going to stand initially, and that will be my direction to them, is before a game starts, one of their jobs is going to be standing out by the door, making sure only the right people come through and into the gym. So that'll be part one. And then I will be there as a game administrator. And so I'll be backing up that safety captain, and I'll make sure that I'm around to also help. So I'll be there at all the games.
Are parents, can we have parents sign the safety protocol that they adhere to that, and that if they do not follow whatever those are, that they would risk their child being able to continue to participate in that sport? Is that something that, I know that you mentioned in the fall sports, there was like a packet for the athletes, but I would like to see if there's something that the parents would also, their guardians would also be able to, or be required to submit as well.
Yep, I could write up something to give to the coaches to hand out to the parents to make sure that they sign it and I can get it back. I can make that a requirement to make sure that all parents are aware. I'm pretty confident that the parents are pretty aware of this at this point, which is great. But you're right. If I can talk to the coaches about that.
I think the parents are definitely wanting to follow, and I don't think anyone is ill intent. I never think that. I mean, it's the excitement. It's just, people get comfortable. Think I'm just the only one. I'm just going to go running. I just think it's hard. We have to think more of a community-wide impact here. And so I think from a lesson learned, like you talked about the outside, if, and I guess the parents, it sounds like they would be willing to, obviously if they want their kids to participate, should be fine with such a, an exercise. But I think I would feel more comfortable that they be outlined in the beginning, and that they're, required, like, this is what, you're requiring me to do as your role in our partnership to keep our school and our community safe. And that, not by not adhering to whatever that is, it could risk, your child's participation in the program or safety for everybody, really. But
yeah, I have no problem working with that and trying to work with the coach and try to see if we can talk to the parents and get something signed off ahead of time. That's a requirement.
Okay.
I'll be happy to do that. And we are going to probably have parents for one night. For the senior night, we'll allow 2 parents to show up, but it'll be after the game is over. The other team has left. we'll bring the parents in. It'll just be 6, I think for the boys, it's 6 parents. I'm not sure about the girls. So there won't be a ton, and we'll do a senior night there. And that is one time where the parents can partake.
A couple more questions. I'm almost done. Now, if we, so if someone gets, because I know there was some confusion at one point when there was one of our teams played another town's team and there was a COVID, and identifying the right team. I just want to make sure that those structures or those mechanisms of that timely information have been flushed out, so that there's no delay in identifying for tracing. And so whatever that is, that was a concern that came up, out of the recent sports, and it was worrying. It obviously kind of everyone got a little, tizzy, and we obviously don't want to have kids, quarantining who don't need to be. And then, the opposite, So in the Brian Haas, I know when we amended the fall sports, there was with the stipulation that it was, and Brian B, I'm not going to, you mentioned this, that it would be with stipulation that there's no active cases in that building where the schools are. That is part of this process, correct? That we're going to be validating that and confirming that before playing, that we're not going to be playing with a team that has active cases in the school, or is that not the approach we're going to take?
Well, the MIAA rule would be is that if you have one active case in the school and that person is quarantining, that the team you could still go against that team. It comes down to what the team has and what the team currently has in there. So if the team has a COVID case, then we wouldn't go against that team. But if there's 1 case or 2 cases in the school, but they're quarantining and not in school anymore, and they've already tested and we know the kids are good, we would still go against them in that case. At least that's what the current rule is.
And 2 more. One, I noticed just like looking at the policy that we found that it did say that the JV did include middle school, 6 through 8. So, and I know in the fall, that was what was eventually allowed for like field hockey and some participation. So is that not something, are the 6 through 8 not part of JV is what we're saying?
So I've had talks with the coach about this. For the only middle school that I didn't include in there was just soccer, because we canceled the middle school soccer. Now what ended up happening is the varsity and JV didn't have quite enough kids to field full teams. So we had allowed them to pull up a couple of basically some of the middle schoolers to come and fill in the team and fill in those gaps. Basketball, I'm not sure that's going to happen. That's something that Paul and I were going to talk about. He's going to do his tryouts. And if he has more than enough kids, we're just going to use just the high school team. But if it looks like he's going to be short on enough players, that's something I would discuss with him at the time. If it's something that would be worth pulling up kids for, he would have a separate tryout. I'm not sure.
I guess what I was thinking, like we're talking about the social emotional well-being of kids. I mean, I think the middle school kids clearly are also impacted. They have been cut for the whole year. And so I just want to make sure they don't get lost on any opportunity. Even if it's just, I noticed reading through there's like a level 2 where it's just maybe scrimmages and skills, instead of, competition, that maybe could be explored. But I just want to think about their opportunity if we're pushing for this and we're focusing on the social emotional well-being of interacting, that there could be other ways where they're not playing other teams, but maybe, and I know Maynard Youth Soccer even explored something where it was just skills and whatnot. So I don't know, I would just like to hear if that they're not totally left out if we are going to proceed forward with this.
That's a good comment. I know as playing against other schools, middle school, that was our entire league. Midwatch voted that out so that won't happen. But you're right. You could have an intramural type team, or one that just practices with scrimmages and skills. That could be a possibility. And that's something I would have to talk to me and the coaches in the middle school and see if that's something that we could put together for them, for sure.
Oh, great. And my last question for you is about external organizations. I know that what we're talking about is particularly for the Maynard teams, but I know our facilities have historically not been used only by Maynard public schools. And I haven't heard conversation about that, but is that something that's not going to be happening? Because obviously that would require more cleaning and responsibility and monitoring on school property. So can you speak to that?
Yep. So we're not going to have any other outside programs in the school. The one that we've sometimes in the past have used has been the youth sports, like the youth basketball, and they're going to be at the Boys and Girls Club, and they're going to be strictly at Boys and Girls Club. So we're really kind of making that separate group there for the Girls and Boys Club, then our high school, and then the middle school. So, yep.
Okay. All right. So we don't have to worry about people using it in the evening hours.
Nope.
and then cleaning it. So it's really going to be only Maynard public schools.
Yeah. And in the high school, it will just be just that varsity team too. So very specific.
Yeah. And that's really tough. I mean, I know this is all really hard. I mean, I got to say thank you so much. I mean, deciding, the level of safety and what's, how you proceed forward is really not easy for anybody. And I know you're in the front lines hearing it from both us and the parents. You're getting it like at both ends. So thank you so much for the efforts and being thoughtful and pulling it together. Even if it's not always in agreement, but I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. So Brian H., what is your recommendation?
So given everything that we've heard from the beginning of the meeting on through Brian's presentation with the MIA recommendations and safety protocols, I would recommend that we do in fact have the basketball season at this time and move forward with it as described in the presentation.
Okay, and then there will be opportunities to revisit in the future should the cases explode or whatnot.
Yep, we can revisit. I mean, Brian and I are in pretty constant communication, and then once the season's underway, we're in more communication. And I'll keep you apprised if things change or if numbers change one way or the other.
It'd be great if we could get like a clarifying metric of what that cutoff might be, like what that, trigger, like if, someone on the team, we're going to cancel it, or whatever it is, or if it's, I just would like to hear a little bit, because that's something that hasn't really been cleared in understanding that, where we would want to just say like, okay, you know what, this is too risky for us. We're going to, not proceed forward. I haven't heard what that will be. It's kind of like wait and see. And I'm not comfortable with being reactive always in this kind of approach.
So I think Brian described basically what that is. So it's not so much if there's a number in the community or a number in the school, it's really if there's a number of, or a person on the team itself that would indicate to us not to go to the school. But if it was
I'm talking about even at Maynard, even if Maynard has.
And probably the same thing, I would think. I don't want to speak for Brian, but if there's just somebody in the school who's at home quarantining, we wouldn't necessarily, I mean, and we've had that situation, we wouldn't have to then not have a game. But Brian, go ahead.
I would just say on that is if you end up having a COVID case on the team, that team would have to stop playing at the time because they've all had interaction with each other. At least that's my understanding now. If it is a secondary contact where the parents are there, then that one team member can quarantine, but the rest of the team may still be able to play. So I think that's right now where the limitation is, but that's something I can always be talking. Again, Brian has mentioned it. We do talk a lot together. And as I come across any new situation, he gets messages from me like, all right, this happened. And we try to find a work way together to make sure that we settle it correctly,
Yeah, the
safely.
sibling piece was the one I was thinking about, where, which came up, like that was part of the Maynard Public School amended their process. So I know how would that work? If someone is in a family happened, would we require that person to not play?
I didn't have a specific rule for that, but it would make sense that if you have a sibling that has COVID in the household, that you wouldn't be able to play at that time. You yourself would have to quarantine, but not the rest of the team.
That's in line with how we're proceeding.
Yeah, so I thought, yep.
As a school.
So I think Brian H., you've done such a great job throughout the whole thing with communicating that, to Natasha's point, if you can just keep communicating if and when things change,
Absolutely.
That's, you know, that'll mean a lot. So
Yep, we'll continue that.
have confidence that you guys will make the right decisions.
Yeah, and I think for me, the hearing about the external organizations and how you're handling that, the no spectators, how that will be handled, but getting live streamed, I honestly can't wait to watch the games. You know, I think just like maybe our school committee meetings, maybe you get more spectators watching, which would be pretty cool. And just the cleaning protocol, the finance piece tied to that, that's helpful to hear as well. And just for the record, say Maynard does fantabulous and we go the whole season, what is tournament? Is there postseason? Let's just clear the air and put that up front. What is postseason? Is it not going to happen? Would it happen? Would we proceed with that?
Our league, MIA said no postseason. So the state is not putting on any postseason tournaments. Okay. Now, some pods out there might put like a little tournament just between themselves, like have a little pod champion. But I don't even think we're going to do that. I think we just want to get in as many games as we can safely and then just end it. You know, so I don't think we're going to try to do any type of playoff system at all whatsoever. Okay,
so that's not part of the plan then.
Nope.
Right.
Can you say that one more time? No, I'm just
Well, no, this is part of, again, when we're talking about like writing a letter, you know, or having parents sign off, like some language like that would be helpful to include, like this was, you know, what the plan is, so they understand the intent of the program. You know, again, this is new for everybody. And so we're working through doing the best we can and trying to make the decision in the best interest of everybody. And people feeling gets hurt, and it's really no intention to that. So it's helpful if we can clear some of that up in the beginning, so that you know the expectations as you're going into. And even like, again, for the middle school, if we're able to like get some skills in, so they're able to get some social, emotional, you know, interaction. If parents, I don't even know if there's an appetite for it, to be honest. And maybe that would be the first step, is, you know, gauging parent appetite for even doing skills or whatever. Because that could certainly answer the question whether you even dig further if there's none. So, but I would, that would be my lasting feedback. So thank you.
So should we take a vote, or?
We don't need to vote.
We don't have to. So just so I think everybody's in agreement.
No. I mean, unless someone was completely against what they have proposed, we don't need to vote, and it's not a requirement for us to vote because we're in a hybrid mode. And the only reason we voted in the fall was because we were fully remote at the time.
I think for me, it would be helpful, since I see a lot of head nodding, that it seems like both Brians have received the feedback well. If there's reasons that you don't feel that the recommendations or what you're hearing will work for some reason, I would want to hear back about that. Because I'm leaving here thinking that you will be absorbing the feedback and incorporating that as part of, you know, the program. So that would be my only, you know, thought on. We're not voting on it, but if there's issues with what anyone has suggested, that you would circle back and let us know why that's not possible or whatever.
Okay, so just to be clear, my understanding is we're moving forward with basketball.
Correct.
I think, yes, with basketball, with the feedback that I would like to see, if possible.
Through February 21st.
Yes, so,
Yep.
You know, no postseason, all those things, you know, that would be part of that, I think, agreement. Bethlyn, I don't know if you look like you want to say something.
No, I think that's good. I think also it would be great if there was a way, like thinking outside the box, to try to see if folks are comfortable and you can do something for middle schoolers within those same safety protocols. That would be nice to be able to do.
We can look into that.
I think I appreciate what you've all put into this and what it will do for students. It's going to be, I hate being a parent and not being able to be there, and they won't be able to hear people cheering, but you know, they're there.
It is tough, right? I mean, I guess that's what you give up for your kids, right? To the benefit of the kids being able what to do. And that's what all of this is kind of about, is that we're, you know, as a community, we're sacrificing and, you know, for what do we know is better for our kids. So.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to cut it short because this has gone on long enough. And yeah, it's late. So, thank you, Brian B, very much for your time and for your presentation. And I think that the guidelines that have been set in place are very helpful. And they make me feel comfortable in, you know, we're starting off with just practices in December. We don't have games until January. And so there's time for us to feel it out and see how it goes. And I think that's great. So thank you very much. All right. Now, people, on to the review and acceptance of the superintendent's goals. So I think personally, we've reviewed them before, and I think they're thorough and measurable and well thought out and appropriate. I don't have any need for further discussion, but do any of you?
I think the public, it would be great if Brian could speak to them so the public hears what his goals are.
Well, it's posted online and people can read them. I mean, yes, I suppose he could, but Brian, do you feel?
I mean, I don't know, it's 9:30. If you want me to share my goal, I can read them out loud to you, if that would be of benefit to everybody. So people know what they are online, but I don't have a problem with that. First goal, I mean, I'll just tell you what they are. Sort of the main goal. So goal 1 is successful participation and completion of the new superintendent induction program, which is a program that all new superintendents in the state of Massachusetts are part of. Very helpful, provides mentoring and connections and networking and guidance. I mean, specifically around this year, lots of conversations around COVID, lots of conversations around athletics. So that's been very, very helpful. Goal 2 is effective entry plan and action plan. Again, that's a very typical part of a new superintendent's goals in terms of analyzing the system and assessing where the system's at and recognizing strengths and areas for improvement and coming up with a short and long-term plan to address those items. Number 3 would be, and so this is a little more specific to our team per se, but collaboratively build a strong administrative team. Sometimes you walk into one, sometimes you're building one, sometimes it's all brand new. And our team is somewhere in the middle of that. We have a few people that have been around a while, and lots of our administrative team, quite frankly, is brand new this year. And we're all learning to work together and know each other and support one another, and in effect, support the students of Maynard as well. And
can I hold on 1 second? I just want to clarify, Lydia, I didn't see these posted online with the packet. So that's why I thought it was important. I don't know if they're posted anywhere else. So I don't know if the public has seen that, if that's where they were supposed to be. Okay, sorry.
No problem. And the last goal, kind of exciting. It keeps coming up. It's coming up again and again. I like it, which is support effective practices focusing on diversity, anti-racism, equity, and inclusion. And that's both from a administrative, teacher, and student level. So I'm excited about that one. So those are my 4 sort of short and long-term goals for this year.
Excellent.
The one thing that I really like that you added, Brian, was the measurement and monitoring tools.
Yeah, thank you for taking that in.
Absolutely.
Have a difficult time with some of these abstract things, like how does it go back to you? So that really helpful to me. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I did have a question about the measurement tool for the first one. I know you've been doing, you go to them. I don't know if we get a lot of visibility into, I guess, what comes out of them, but your participation, you put them in your report to us every week. I'm wondering if I don't remember, maybe I need to look at it more deeply, but just like the attendance, is there something that you get at the end of this year that you're like whatever assignments are complete that demonstrates that, or is it just, I'm just wondering what concrete thing that we would see about that completion of that program? Because it's a multi-year program, right?
Correct. So you'll actually meet my mentor. He'll come to a school committee meeting. He was scheduled earlier, but it got pushed back just due to COVID. But you'll have an opportunity to meet him. I think that's probably the big thing. And then as you said,
no, that'll be great. Maybe we can add that in. I would say maybe add that just to engage with the mentor as one of the measurements.
Well, in our calendar, don't we have in January for you, Brian, to give us like a mid-year? So maybe at that point, you could even summarize how far you've gotten on that one.
I can do that. Yep. No problem.
All right. Anyone else?
No, thank you for taking the time to work on these, and it's very detailed and appreciated. So,
and a yeoman's job considering everything else that's been thrown at you.
Yeah, it's very
We're
clear.
getting it done.
Very thoughtful and not just, so I really appreciate it.
All right, I will accept a motion to, or I will entertain a motion to accept Brian's superintendent goals for the year 2020-21.
I'll make a motion that we accept Superintendent Haas's goals for FY21 with the inclusion of the measurement on goal 1 that we would be meeting with his mentor as well, as he indicated.
Do I have a second?
Yep, I will.
All right, discussion. Okay. Roll call vote, Mary Branley.
Yes.
And Jessica Clark.
Yes.
Bethlyn Houlihan.
Yes.
Natasha Rivera.
Yes.
Lydia Clancy. Yes. All right, Brian, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much. These are fantastic. Now, on to members' reports and comments. And we are starting with Jessica Clark tonight.
So member reports, we had a strategic planning subcommittee meeting today, which went very well. The admin team is very nicely working on a calendar of presentations for monthly updates from kind of cycling through each school. So we've already had the civics one from the high school, IXL from Fowler. This was, I can't remember if we decided this month or January will be a social emotional update from, and jump in Bethlyn if I'm missing anything, or from Green Meadow, from guidance at Green Meadow, which will be great. And we're working on making sure that we kind of have all of those plugged in for the remainder of the year, because we feel like that's a great means to get things out to the community. So that is exciting. And then we also started to review some of the long-term strategic objectives and goals. And it's amazing to see how much energy and time is being put into those long-term, short-term plans with action items attached to them, even with everything else going on in the world. So those we will share out. I think, remind me, Brian or Bethlyn, will be ready to be shared out with the community and posted. I think we said it maybe in a month or so, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that was great. And I don't think I forgot anything, but if I did, Bethlyn, you can fill in when it's your turn.
Will do.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. Mary Branley.
So did you guys notice we didn't have any policies tonight? Yay!
I did.
But anyway, so I had a great discussion with Representative Hogan earlier this week about different funding and that for FY21, which they still haven't solidified. So what I'm going to do is I'll put together the notes and I'll send them to all you guys for different pockets of money for us to keep an eye out on. I talked to her about the civics program that we're going to be that we're trying to institute, and that there's no money for it. There is money actually in the budget for that. There's additional COVID money. I talked to her about the need for summer school for the kids that are falling behind more than others. There's going to be money available for that. So anyway, so there's some really good information that again, it hasn't been finalized, but at least there does seem as though they're listening to a certain extent. But I'll put together the notes and then I'll send them to everybody. And the other thing, Natasha, we talked the last meeting that I was going to put together a resolution about not having the MCAS this year. And I think you guys probably saw that Natasha found one that we can actually utilize. So it's pretty straightforward. So what I was going to do was just to send a DocuSign to everybody to sign it so that I could actually send it off to Representative Hogan, to Jamie Eldridge, and obviously to the Commissioner of Education. So if everybody is okay with that, I think, and then I'll let Natasha talk about the budget stuff. So.
Mary, would we or should we add that maybe onto the next meeting so we can vote on that that resolution, MCAS, just as a formality? I don't think there's going to be much objection to it, but
you can do that. Happy to.
And I didn't know that was a good plan on all the other resolutions. Maybe even think about are there any other ones that there were a lot that MASC had recommended. I don't know if that was anything that we wanted to maybe think about.
That's why I brought it up last meeting.
Right. That's why I didn't know if we wanted to add those, because we could make some templates and do them all at, a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think we've already done a couple of them. We did the anti-racism one, but yeah,
right.
So we'll bring those up next time. It just seems as though that agenda is getting really full, really packed. So
the budget's going to be, right. Well, the one next week is different, right?
Anyway. That's it. That's everything I've got.
Okay, thank you. Natasha?
So picking up on the budget piece, we had our town budget subcommittee meeting, and we got revision 4 that Greg is being used. I circulated that to our team, and so everyone has that information to see the direction that the town is going in. The budget request will be at our 17th meeting. That'll be presented to the public. Everyone just looking for feedback. That needs to be back. We met with the budget subcommittee yesterday, right? Oh my gosh, there's so much. This day has been such a long day. It felt like there was 2 days between that. Yeah, just yesterday. And which was great. So this will be, very, they're doing really, Brian and Wayne and Jennifer doing a really great job putting the information together. So just the timeline, I send everybody the timeline. So just, strict adherence to that if possible. And then just to highlight what was mentioned in our town, I think Mike Guzzo's last day is January 8th, possibly. He will, be retiring. And so just to put that on everybody's radar and how we can ensure the school committee is able to participate or engage and acknowledge his efforts for us would be just to add that there. And Wayne had circulated, which I shared everyone, the quarterly report. He is going to be, after our time sensitive budget pieces are kind of settle a bit, putting together something that he is more likable, that he can report out to us on a quarterly basis that includes the things that we're, making sure that we're, seeing and hearing what's happening there. The joint budget review, which is where we all kind of get together with the town and, hoot and holler, is going to be, it sounded like where the FinCom landed was February 13th, that Saturday. And from, I believe, Lydia, Brian, you'll be presenting on behalf of the district. Is that correct?
Brian will be, yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So Brian is, because a lot of it's the operational, pieces. It just seemed that, operational member would speak better to it, just like Greg does on behalf of the town there. The next town budget subcommittee meeting is the 21st of December. So after we vote on our request for money. We're not voting on delineated dollars, you know, just I know this always comes up every year to clarify with the public. We're voting on what we're asking for. That we will be, Mary and I will be meeting it. So I'm sure we may hear, you know, him and Han about what we voted on, but that is our next meeting. And just to highlight for the budget subcommittee, what we've tried to do this year is have some standing items that we just kind of make sure we're hitting at every meeting. So one of those is like revenue, you know, we're just kind of making sure we're not losing sight of things. So those are things that if anyone has any questions, you know, we do have some, you know, conversations that are going on, but also relating to warrants. I just updated our agenda to add like a placeholder if people have questions about warrants or information on there, that's something that we are creating a space that will allow the school committee to ask or, you know, seek clarification on if necessary. And then the negotiation subcommittee, just discussions are with the union are going to continue, and we're meeting on Friday. And we also need to think about the custodial contract, which will be expiring this year, but all meetings will be in executive session at this point. So nothing that will be ready for public discussion. And just last time I forgot to mention that the Green Meadows School Council had their meeting, and I was able to just see participated as a public member of the public. But see, I was really great, the staff, how much they've returned and continuously engage and there, and they've really committed to that year after year. So I just wanted to highlight their commitment to really sticking with it over the year, and they do a really great job there. Charles Gabron is helping facilitate those along with that. So, but it was good to hear that. I don't know. I personally would like to eventually go to at least one at each school. I will give notice and behave myself, but I just think it's helpful just to hear, and also for them to, you know, the community members, the parents that do participate, see that, you know, that, you know, we really appreciate their volunteerism as well for our schools. And that's all I got. And I just want to actually thank Paul. I forgot to thank the coaches earlier. I know that a lot of the work that happens is really coach. So it's just a whole conglomerate of behind the scenes magic that happens to make the safe protocols in place. So it wasn't just the athletic director. I just wanted to acknowledge that appreciation for all levels there.
Thank you. And Bethlyn.
All right. So I don't have a lot of things. One was I know, Lydia, you're aware of this, but you all may have seen that we had some that say public comment, and then they get the auto response about what it needs to say, and then they change it to citizens comment PD read. So that's in process of being fixed, so there's no more confusion for folks, and it just is a matter of there's a slight disconnect, and folks want to make sure things get read, so then they rename it, and you know, it's just boo. So Lydia was already aware and all over it, but I just wanted to mention that because it came up, so I wanted to say that we let the public know that we're aware of that. And then we had talked about we didn't mention this today in the meeting, but the strategic planning and curriculum meeting, we've been shorting strategic planning, but Natasha wanted to make clear that we haven't changed, like the name right now is still, it's like SP&C. We have the curriculum part in there unless we had a discussion to change that, which we were still keeping the scope that was appropriate for curriculum within that in any case. But so just to say we are, that could be a future conversation, but I feel like we have so many other priorities right now that's more of we'll make sure that we just keep it as strategic planning and curriculum for now. And knowing that we're being very careful on what we're covering within the context of that based on what makes sense for us to be able to be looking at that relates to the strategic planning committee. And then in the context of that, just a few add-ons to Jessica's excellent summary. One, she was going to just send around the outline. Did we decide that, Jessica? Yeah, okay. Yeah, do you want to mention that? And you can, why don't you mention that?
Yeah, so I'll send the outline around to school committee for feedback for any ideas of presentations you think community might want to hear that you've heard from people, or ideas that you have, or certain things you'd like added or clarification on. So I will share that. It's on my to-do list.
Are you thinking that, I know we have that annual calendar, like building it into there. I don't know if that would be a good way to kind of.
So we were thinking probably not, just because
okay.
Here, for example, based upon where we are, we want like that social emotional update from Green Meadow, where next year it might be, oh, we're building our literacy program. Let's have the literacy specialist or
you don't want to tie a specific thing. It was more like just a space for curriculum update. Maybe
we're cycling, like, you know, high school follow Green Meadow, high school. And then we also have that coupled with administrative updates. Those are the calendar updates where we have budget this January, right? And then we have assessment updates in, what was that, February. So those calendar will be plugged in annually all the time, because those shouldn't change based on, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, there are some time, but I just was thinking it'd be good tools. We don't have like, you know, a lot of tools if you were what direction you guys were going, but it makes sense. You don't want to tie into a specific thing, but maybe, I don't know, even plugging in like curriculum, you know, if it's general, you know, curriculum topic, you know, and then that could be determined, you know, at that time or year to year or whatever.
I want to take a look at it and see what you think too about that. Like, well, we can look and okay.
Yeah, if there's even like a general placeholder, like, okay, you know, however you want to do that.
So the other piece with that was the nice thing with they're taking the long-term objectives, essentially taking the 3 pillars of the strategic plan and adding, taking each long-term objective and then having like the initiative within each and goals. And they're going to now run that through the CIAs, the leadership team, and run that through and then add in benchmarks. So it's really been a really nice process of breaking it down and in a very strategic way for the strategic plan. And then once they got it filled in more, then we'll bring it to you to be able to take. They just want to make sure we did an initial review as they're in process, so that we could be like yay or nay or tweaks or whatever, so we could help them ensure that it's looking like it's going to meet needs from the community, from what we understand of the community's needs as well. And then you'll all get to look at it too. So it's not like it's a done deal, but it's going to be a process that they're going through all the channels. So then we'll be able to also share that out to the full group. I think then the only other thing was there was an editorial in the newspaper from Melinda Gates about caregiving, and that there's a gender gap that has been greatly increased amidst the pandemic, because someone has to be there to take care of the children. And actually is considering having like a czar. They had one the last time was when the car industry was tanking. They had a czar for cars, and having something like that in relation to caregiving, so that they could look at that on a global perspective and across sectors and across departments. And I just wanted to mention that because I feel like it really touches upon what we are seeing happen every day for people and the struggles that they face. So I wanted to mention that here. And then the last thing was just that, and this ended up happening tonight, but I was wondering about adding to our calendar. I know we've had in the past presentations from the student resource officer and police, but being able to do some recognition of those efforts too. I feel like any of those collaborators, like being able to actually have official recognition of what those community partnerships and what they bring. I just feel like that would be, it occurred to me as a nice thing that we want to celebrate, and to do that in a little bit more of a formal way would be, recognition would be nice. So that was something I wanted to mention to the committee.
Are you thinking that you'd want to build that into the calendar, our annual calendar?
Yeah,
or
I thought it would be nice to then it's kind of codified a little bit and
kind of hold
something
this.
that we do, and we could give like it could be community recognition and give some examples like community partnership recognition, and obviously the SROs, I don't know, it might end up being things that obviously Justin just doing a lot with the darn solar panel. I don't know what it would end up being exactly. We could kind of see, but that was just a thought that I had as far as being able to continue to celebrate the ways that we are partnering, working together very well in the town, and recognizing that. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much. Brian, Jeff, Wayne, do you guys have anything you want to share?
Nope. Thank you.
Wayne's asleep.
Wayne went to bed.
He's probably eating pizza.
He's there.
Like, you know, he's, yeah.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock.
No, you got unmuted.
We can hear you.
Wayne, anything you want to share?
No, I'm good.
All right, excellent. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
All right, second.
Second.
Discussion. Okay, Mary Branley,
Yes.
Jessica Clark,
Yes.
Ethlyn Houlihan,
Yes.
Natasha Rivera,
Yes.
Lydia Clancy. Yes. All right. Good night, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.